All right, welcome everybody to our November 12th Village Board meeting. I'd like to get started with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. The first thing on the agenda was our presentation from our county legislator, and she was called to a county legislator meeting this evening. So therefore, she will not be in attendance at this meeting. So we're going to move right on to our substitute, Brian, right?
Yes.
Replace for Jack to talk about Meals on Wheels. Yes, please.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the Village of Rhinebeck Board for allowing me to speak in front of you tonight. My name is Brian Berg, and the reason why I am the replacement is that I'm the first vice president of the Greater Hyde Park Meals on Wheels. And during the last 3 years, we refer to ourselves as the Greater Hyde Park Rhinebeck Meals on Wheels. For 3 years now, we have been delivering to clients in the village and greater part of Rhinebeck as far as Hyde Park. And Hyde Park is basically defined as the Hyde Park School District. We're as far south as the city of Poughkeepsie border, and we go out to the Taconic Parkway and up here to Rhinebeck, and we're defined by the river on our west coast. I have been a volunteer with Meals on Wheels for a little bit more than 3 years. They saw a sucker come in the door and asked me to get involved in the board and then the executive board and then an elected position. But it's really a fantastic opportunity. It's a great organization, and I'm very, very happy to be involved. Everyone typically that's heard of Meals on Wheels knows that our #1 priority is food. But a couple things that you may not be aware of is that there is no minimum or maximum age requirement to be a client with Meals on Wheels. A lot of people think they know that it's for seniors. And quite frankly, seniors are a very significant part of our client population. But there is no minimum age. And in my experience with Meals on Wheels, we've had teenagers, high school age individuals that because of some type of surgery or extended illness that's kept them out of school, their parents have signed them up for Meals on Wheels so that they have a hot lunch delivered in the middle of the day when the parents can't be home. So it is largely about seniors, but I want to emphasize not exclusively about our senior population. Having said that, the access to food, good nutritional food, a hot meal, is a very important asset to seniors in our area. Dutchess County, Hyde Park, Rhinebeck, you name it. There are agencies through the county that duplicate our services through the Office of the Aging, but generally with Dutchess County, there's minimum income requirements. And actually, probably I said that incorrectly, there are maximum income requirements. If you earn more than this much money, you do not qualify for meal assistance with the County Office of the Aging. The Greater Hyde Park and Rhinebeck Meals on Wheels, however, we don't have that minimum requirement. We don't have a maximum requirement. We also, I want to emphasize, our budget is just south of $100,000 annually, and 50% of our budget is fundraised and donated. For that reason, we keep our cost to clients very, very economical. It's $23 a week for a nutritious hot meal delivered 5 days a week. And for an extra $5 a week, $1 a day, you can get a second bag lunch meal delivered as well with that hot meal. So we're very, very proud that not only for 5 years that cost has not gone up, but we are very proud that the volunteers work hard and fundraise 50% of our budget. Talking about our volunteers, we have somewhere between 95 and 100 volunteers that run the program. We are a small Meals on Wheels program, but still close to 100 volunteers it takes to run our situation. Only 3 of those individuals out of approximately 100 are paid. Everyone else is an absolute volunteer. We are very proud of that. In the last 3 years, approximately, we have served about 24 clients in the specifically Rhinebeck Village area. So that's through the years, 24 people, your neighbors in your community, that have benefited from our program. Currently, there are approximately 8 individuals in your community right now. I'm going to be delivering tomorrow. Wednesday is my day to deliver, and we have 5 routes. The route number 5 comes up into Rhinebeck, and we have 8 people that are currently receiving our Meals on Wheels program. Now, everybody knows about the food. I let you know that it's predominantly seniors, but it's not exclusive to seniors. There's no age requirement. I also want to indicate to you that it's more than just about the food. A lot of the clients that we have in Meals on Wheels, we may be the only person they can count on seeing in their day 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, all but 5 days out of the year. Okay, there's 5 days that we don't deliver. Sometimes we're the only person. Sometimes, in less than positive circumstances, we are the person that comes to their aid or care. I haven't used my 10 minutes yet, so I've brought a story in my pocket to tell. Every year we invite local representatives from the community, it's in March, April, to come and take one of their lunch times and deliver Meals on Wheels with us. We generally have done very well having politicians, volunteers, business owners, community members from the greater Hyde Park area. We would love in the future to get representatives from Rhinebeck as well to come into our program. Well, last March when we did it, one of the local individuals that we invited was Representative Delgado. And geez, you know, it's not like there's anything that goes on in Washington these days. He was unavailable, but he said very interested to coming to see how our program worked. Well, very politely, that's what everybody says when they decide not to come. However, Representative Delgado then contacted us out of the blue this summer and said, hey, I'm on vacation. I have some time. I'd like to come down and deliver with you. So we set up a day for Representative Delgado. We set up we have 5 routes. We made a special route for Representative Delgado. It was to the north, and it included just about every client in Rhinebeck. We didn't plan it, but 3 of the 8 clients we arranged to have Representative Delgado help us deliver to. One person didn't answer the door, and we have emergency protocol when that happens. And we went in and found that client down on the floor. They had fallen and could not get up, and they were injured, okay? That does not happen every day, but it happened that day with Representative Delgado, representing that it's about more than just the meals. Well, if that wasn't enough, a second client staggered to the door with a blood-soaked ear. They had just fallen. They had been able to get up, but now they had this injury that we helped address by calling emergency services, okay? In effect, we were first on the scene, first responders. And if that wasn't enough, a third client on this trip had fallen, had a gash on their head, was able to answer the door, but we assisted also. So I don't know if it's Representative Delgado or if it was just his good fortune or what, but it was a very eventful day. And it proves that Meals on Wheels, the food is the primary mission, but it's about so much more than the food. And we're very fortunate and grateful to offer this service to your community. Jack has asked me to extend an invitation to anyone on the board that would like. We have our volunteer luncheon at the Hyde Park Methodist Church on Wednesday, November 20th at 1 p.m. Aside from all of us volunteers with Meals on Wheels, we have local representatives and politicians and business people and organization representatives that come and enjoy that volunteer luncheon with us. We'd love to have representation from the Village of Rhinebeck. If you have any questions, I've handed out our current newsletter and a brochure. Please look at it. I encourage you, neighbor, relative, whoever you may need that may need our services, but they might not be aware of us, please help get that information out. And thank you very much. Yes, Pat.
Where are the meals prepared?
Great question. There is an industrial kitchen at the United Methodist Church in the village of Hyde Park. And this Meals on Wheels chapter has been active for about 42 or 43 years. It grew out of literally a handful, about a half a dozen individuals from the Hyde Park Methodist Church that said, hey, we think we know some neighbors that could use a hand with meals. And back 43 years ago, I think that's in the 70s, that's when it all started, and it grew out of the church. It is not affiliated with the United Methodist Church. We rent their kitchen. We have a very good relationship, but it's a business relationship. It's not sponsored by the church. It's not a church organization.
And if,
Go ahead.
sorry. And if somebody wants to volunteer with you, it would be the same contact, right?
Absolutely. The telephone number is in the literature that I handed out. Call that number. Email, call myself, Jack Fenton. He's the president. We never have enough volunteers, but at the same time, we have a wealth, a generosity of awesome volunteers that make it go.
Hey, Brian, I was just wondering, in your years of service, what's the trend line? Are you seeing more residents needing the Meals on Wheels services, less, the same?
Great question. Like I said, when this organization was created, there were a handful of community members, mostly connected somehow with the United Methodist Church, about a half a dozen. Well, with a margin of error of 1 or 2, we're kind of in the political season, so I feel I have to say that. We're in 19, so 2018, we had a weekly average, 52 weeks of the year, of approximately 57 clients. I know last Wednesday when I delivered, I talked to our kitchen manager about that, and she said last week there were 52 clients that we were delivering to. We have a self-imposed maximum of 60. And this summer, we were definitely there. A couple weeks we were at 61, 62. 60, magic number for no apparent reason. Space, volunteers to bag the lunches, to meal up the food, that's where we are. So we're right up there at what is an artificial maximum. Definitely, for the last 2 or 3 years, we've been averaging about 55 clients a week for the 52 weeks of the year. And more specifically to your question, yes, every year our statistics have shown our clientele that we've serviced to be increasing. I would say 10 years ago, we weren't in nearly the positive financial situation that we are in now. At that time, high 30s, low 40s was the weekly clientele average. And we've gone significantly since then, almost 20 clients a week.
Thank you.
And I also want to say, present like tomorrow, there'll be 8 clients. Today, there were 8 clients in the village of Rhinebeck that we serviced. But over the 3 years that we have been in the village of Rhinebeck, there has been, and a give or take, minimum 24 individuals. Some people come to us and are clients until they pass away. Some people come to us for a week, 2 weeks, 6 months, until whatever their personal situation is changes. Sometimes it's a medical situation, a financial situation, a family situation, transitional housing situation. Okay, so clients come and go. That's why we may have 8 now, but we've serviced at least 24 in the last 3 years in your community. Question?
So you did say there's contact information here, but what is the protocol if you know an individual and for whatever, they're too proud?
Okay.
How can we help you to help them?
We make a referral to Meals on Wheels, and we will reach out to that person.
Okay.
Hey, hi, how you doing? I'm Brian, Meals on Wheels. I have had a referral that you may be interested in what we can offer. This is what we can offer. Are you interested? And going to procedure or process, when we get an inquiry, we arrange a home visit. There's about a half a dozen people on our board that do home visits. Generally, we take a month or 2 every year. And, I do those home visits as well. And during month of April, let's say, any client that expresses a desire to come on board, I will do the home visit. We get to check, they check us out, we check them out. We have this information plus other information. We got these refrigerator magnets that go right on the fridge, and they have the 5 days of the year that we don't deliver. It has the contact numbers, the important information like that, so it can be right there at their beck and call. And then if the prospective client decides that it's something they can benefit from, depending on the day of the week and the status of the kitchen, we can generally get them up and going in 2 or 3 days.
Thank you.
Yes?
I have a question. I deliver meals for Dutchess County Office of the Aging.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, is it regional, like a different town, these different groups?
Okay.
What is that?
The Office of Aging, we have a give and take with the Office of Aging. Very frequently, Dutchess County Office of Aging will make a referral to us. They'll call up and they'll say, Brian, there is a prospective client for Meals on Wheels that have contacted us. They live in Statsburg, but they make too much money. Their household income is too high for us to service them. Will you guys service them? Sometimes, although this is the best bargain in the whole world, I believe, in $23 a week, 5 hot meals, $28 a hot meal and a cold meal, 5 days a week. Once in a while, there is clientele that contact us for services but can't afford the $23 a week. We send their referral to the Office of the Aging, and your organization takes care of them. So we have a history of working with each other like that. Now, Meals on Wheels is a national organization. We are a local chapter that belong to the national organization. Boy, I have really blown my time, Pat, I apologize. It was the questions. Rugies locally is very, very involved in our Meals on Wheels chapter. Coming up this week, Thursday, kicks off I think it's called the Season of Love, where if you buy a new Subaru, the dealer on the national level donates $250 to a charity of your choice, and there are either 4 or 5 choice charities that they deal with. We're very fortunate that Meals on Wheels is one of those. But you know, it really gets me aggravated every year. One of the other charities is SPCA. How do you compete with puppies and kittens? Okay? You know, I'd like to see a few more of those donations go to Meals on Wheels, but those darn puppies and kittens are so cute. I'm a dog owner. It's really not fair. Unfair advantage. But I say that in jest. So I can't, Rugies locally here, extremely supportive. The Rugi family and the business, and they'll be at our volunteer luncheon. And actually, they provide us the beautiful cake that we serve for dessert. So I can't say enough great things about Rugies and their involvement with Meals on Wheels as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, our next presentation is Vanessa Bertozzi, who is the new chair of our Climate Task Force.
Thank you very much to the board for having me. My name is Vanessa Bertozzi, and I'm here as the coordinator of the Climate Smart Community Task Force. And thanks to Mayor Bassett, we're already well underway with our efforts. So I know I sent you some information, but I wanted to just share with the folks in the crowd here what Climate Smart Communities is all about. So this is a New York State program run by the Department of Environmental Conservation. It was started, I think, about 10 years ago. And it's an official program with public filings where you do have to submit materials and really put your money where your mouth is. And it's open to any municipality in New York State. So the next deadline for a public filing is actually January 10th, 2020, and that is what we're working towards, and we have a big goal, which I will get to. But first I want to say we're actually starting off in a really great place as a village. I actually discovered that a resolution was passed under Mayor Reardon in 2010 specifically declaring that we want to be a climate smart community and taking this pledge to do just that. And since then, there have already been a number of really significant actions on the village level. Just to name a few, replacing all the lights with LEDs, or the very substantial work that was done to prevent flooding and inundation with the water treatment plant with sea level rise coming. Or the solar panels and the EV charging station. So those are all really great examples that we can get points for in this program. And as Mayor Bassett, I think, as you mentioned in last month's meeting, the more we can do with this program, the more our costs go down as a municipality, more efficiencies are gained, but also we become eligible for more and more grant money with higher levels of certification. So, higher levels of certification brings me to my big drum roll, please, moment, which is we think we can get to a bronze level certification for our January 10th deadline. And this is really impressive because there are only 32 municipalities in the whole state of New York that have achieved this. And I think we can do it. And so what do we need from you for our January 10th deadline? We might be coming and knocking on your door and peppering you with questions about what's the tree commission up to, for example, or when are we going to get those LED street lights? Or can we find all of the documentation and receipts for our big belly solar trash compactors? So we've already been hard at work finding all that documentation for all these actions that we've already done. Thank you especially to Karen, who I know has already been helping out, and to John Fenton and many others. So in addition to answering lots of emails and giving me documentation for these actions, we also want to share about the program. And that's really why I'm here tonight. I wanted to get the ball rolling on reaching out to the community. We're going to create opportunities for volunteers to get involved. As an example, there are some parents and teachers in the community who would like to see bike lanes through the village to the schools. So that might be something we'll host a meeting, and we'd like to invite you to attend, or one of you to attend. And besides that, please spread the word. Start talking up this program. This is something that I think that will literally put us on the map in good ways. So just a little bit of an overview about the program. Climate Smart Communities, it's a list of 100 actions that a municipality can take to lower their carbon footprint. So for the January 10th filing, we're focusing on 28 that really apply to a lot of actions that we've already taken. So it's really about documenting those and including those in the public filing. So with that, we get to each action, each one of the 100 actions, it corresponds to a number of points, and you have to get to 120 points to get bronze filing. And 3 of the actions have to be priority actions. So I've got that all done up in a spreadsheet, and I think we're ready to roll. But if you have any more questions, I'd be happy to share more information about how we came to those 28 actions. And then 2020 and beyond, there's a lot more work to do. Probably coming in 2020 will be a large greenhouse gas inventory of all the municipal buildings and operations. Fun fact, I just found a 2014 greenhouse gas inventory that was already done, joint with town and village. So we have some historical data, which is really cool. So maybe next we'll be going for silver. Only 2 municipalities in the whole state of New York have silver, Ithaca and Ulster County. As part of Ulster, I believe.
They're individually.
Oh, they're silver too? Nice. All right. Part of the work, I'll be reaching out to other folks who've undertaken this program and trying to share best practices as well. So if anybody out there is interested in learning more, feel free to reach out to me. And join our task force or join some of the individual actions that we're going to be undertaking. And I'd like to answer any questions you might have. Thank you for your time.
I think, Vanessa, if we are able to be bronze certified, then we start to qualify for additional grant monies and other things that we can do. Is that it's part of an ongoing process?
That's right. Yeah. So, for example, some of the actions are quite specific. So, for example, installing an EV charger or replacing your light bulbs in municipal buildings with LEDs. And then some of them are more about doing a whole climate vulnerability assessment and really thinking through strategically with your particular municipality, what do you need to plan for? And then that folds into, say, a streetscape committee and a more holistic view on what the future is for our community. And so you get points for planning and research as well as implementation. So I think the idea is you do the research and the planning, and then you have a better view into what you might need that grant money for implementation.
So essentially, at the end of the day, we should have a roadmap.
Yeah, really.
A roadmap that would help the village of Rhinebeck become a climate-smart community, but as well as putting us on a roadmap for saving money for everything that applies to the village, whether it's the big bellies that we did, or we recently, for the board's information, we implemented a recycling policy here for all of our municipal buildings, which actually, in the end of the day, is going to save us money right from the start, because our trash hauler gives us credit for if we separate our trash versus commingling our trash, and saves us money on a recycling container. So that one action already, which we implemented, saved us money, but also puts us on a path for doing something better.
Yeah. The other thing I'd like to mention is, for now, we're focusing really on what the government has done here at a local level, but there's also actions through the program that are compelling us to reach out and engage more with the community. And so we're hoping that there's a broader impact here as more and more people in the village get involved.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Very good.
All right, next on our schedule is to learn more about what we're doing with the Grasmere project in the town of Rhinebeck and its impact on our wastewater and water treatment.
Thanks, Gary. I'm Erin Moore from Ty and Bond. There's no kittens or puppies in this report. So I believe the village board each has received a copy of this. So I'm just going to talk about how we did this analysis, because certainly John and I have talked before. We know that, as the village's priority absolutely is maintaining the very important resource of the wastewater treatment plant. But this focus was specifically on what is the capacity, the rated capacity of each of the features of the treatment plant, and what would need to be done to accept additional flow. So while we noted down some of our other observations, we were pretty surgical and focused in our analysis here. So the first section, so here, this is the report. I hope everyone has their copies, or at least have seen it electronically, sorry. I don't know, probably more electronic documentation is probably one of those features on climate smart communities, so sorry for my printing. We try pretty hard. So the first part of this analysis just talks about flows and where we are right now versus where we'll be in the future. So some interesting things, we've got average flows and where our average flows are right now, which is around 135,000 gallons per day. But also the plant has a peaking factor of about 3, which does seem to be reasonable, but that's observed. And that peak hour flow is around 400,000 gallons per day. Gallons per day as a flow unit, not in one day you've seen that much flow, but that's an important feature, because some of your plant components focus on that hourly peak flow, while other plant components are more sized for your average daily flow. And so the Grasmere project, from their calculations, they're going to add 70,000 gallons per day on average. What we did to try to just understand what could be additional flow capacity, looking at the collection system, where it is right now, not expanding it, but what properties does it go by and thus have an obligation to be served. And we identified 10 vacant parcels that could be developed and served and should be served by the collection system. And so that adds an additional 4,000 gallons per day. It's not a huge number at all, but we wanted to at least take a look, and so we just looked at all the parcels, what was occupied and not, that the collection system currently is directly connected to, and obviously would expect to be served. So,
As
if-
residential?
yes, and we assume, so what we assumed for that, because we don't know what those parcels, but based on where they were in zoning, we said we're going to assume they're a 3-bedroom house, and then added 20% factor of safety to get to that 4,000. This is not all the vacant parcels in the village. It's the vacant parcels adjacent to the collection system that, of course, would expect to be served and would, by right, by New York State, laws and health department laws, expect to be served by the collection system, which passes in front of their parcel.
So Aaron, what you did was you went to our plant and you pulled the records of our daily flows.
Yes,
Right.
so that you can see that on page 2.2-1.
Right.
For 2 years. We
Yeah.
looked at your average flows experienced at the plant and the peak flows. And then the next thing we did is, unfortunately,
I want to ask another question.
Oh, okay,
related
I was
to
going
that.
to say, because we then added something, because
Okay.
as we well know, as we've been watching it across the street, there is an additional significant flow that has not been seen at the plant yet because it just opened. And so then we added to that the Mirbo flow, because that's not going to be reflected historically, but we absolutely know it's there and is discharging.
And so my other question would be the gardens,
So
which are currently under development, and not all of them are occupied or being used, but are also on the treatment plant.
So which flows are there? We did the 10 parcels that are unoccupied were primarily vacant parcels that are associated with the garden. So you and I could talk more about that to make sure what their total reserved capacity is either represented already or should be additionally represented. So that's a good comment, Gary.
Phase 1 and 2 is fully online. Phase 3 is what we're hoping that you guys calculated in the report.
Correct.
Out of Phase 3, I think it's probably half online.
I have no clue.
So that's the
So-
number we have to find.
So we'll follow up to make sure the 10 parcels we're counting and the undeveloped parcels of the garden are indeed the same parcels. And if not, then we'll make
Okay.
sure that that's additionally updated to account for that. So, no, that's really important.
Okay.
We make sure, we did coordinate with John to try to make sure the things that are on the books, was absorbed into this, so. So that produces our flows that are existing and the flows we're looking at. So the future flows that then we base this analysis on were an average flow of 220,000 gallons per day and a peak flow of 3 times that and 660,000 gallons per day. So going through each of the components, so the treatment plant, there's a headworks where there's some grinding facilities, it's a inline comminutor. There's pumping facilities. There's 2 trains of an oxidation ditch system. It's a great plant, but I'm sure we don't need to go through every single piece. From the oxidation ditch, there's clarifiers. From the clarifiers, there's a secondary screw pump. Love those. Those you usually see at really large municipal plants, so it's great you have one that's in such good condition and really operates well for this facility. And then we get to our tertiary system, and that's media filters, sand filters we can call them, but they've got anthracite and GAC, our UV system, and then our sludge management. And so we went through and looked at plans, took measurements on each of the components, and then compared them to regulatory standards. And those are the DEC standards for intermediate wastewater. 10 state standards is a group that developed wastewater that is generally what's going to be our reference for construction of wastewater treatment plants. And in some case, there's a document called TR16, Technical Release 16. That is our 3rd document, and we compared each of these components to it. So there's one component that was needing upgrade to get to the additional flow rate, and those were the media filters. The media filters have some challenge to be super flexible because there's these two trains and they're each piped to each individual filter. So there's definitely improvements that could make them more flexible right now for the village, but certainly with the additional flow, they are over capacity. And while it would be, you know, nice to just say, oh, we'll add this much percentage of capacity to accommodate this flow, you really want things to work in a very logical manner, which means all three media filters should be the same size. So if you take one offline regularly during the course of operation, one of the cells will go offline for backwashing, it's called. However, at some point you may need to replace the media, change out that sand and anthracite. And if you're doing that, having one that's sized one way and two that are sized another way, that's just not how we would recommend anyone would do that. So what you end up is putting, the solution would be to put 3 media filters in. We believe in the old location for, I think it was where your old UV units were, a 3rd filter could fit there and appropriately be piped.
In the UV building?
The same building that the filters are in.
Right.
But I mean, I don't know if you can picture this or not.
I've been there often,
Okay,
so.
so when you first walk into the building,
Yep.
to the right is the first media filter.
Right.
And then to the left is sort of a step-down area.
Yep.
And I do believe it's where long ago your UV units were.
They were.
Before they, yes, I got a confirmation. So not where they are now, but that step-down area to the left. Is it going to be the most easy area to work around? No, it's going to be pretty tight, but it does seem like it would fit there appropriately, and we could get around it. It's not going to be as nice to walk around as where your other 2 units are now, but I don't think it requires a building expansion. The building, has its other challenges, but they're not a capacity issue. So we believe that spot would work, and that's what we're recommending. We have the 3rd unit to be piped in and connected, and that would address the flow. And that's the one feature that's absolutely necessary, is piping these 3 filters together so each of these filters can be used by any train of flow. They're making sure that's been updated to accommodate that, and then putting the 3rd unit in. We presented a cost in the 2nd section of this, the last section, of what that would take, and we've been conservative with the cost. You'll see there's a 40% contingency item. That's admittedly healthy, but at this level, we base this on another facility we recently put a 3rd media filter in. Certainly, vendor costs would allow this to be really dialed in, and then that contingency could be reduced. But that's sort of the step through of this. I know we have had preliminary conversations with, yesterday we had a call, and I have received an email at the end of the day in regard to this. So I think everyone agrees that that is the place where the capacity is limited. It sounds like there'll need to be additional negotiation with the village on how the Grassmere has interpreted these findings, but I think we are on the same page as far as that is the weak spot at the plant that does need the increase. So,
Okay, I have another question.
please.
So my other question is, our plan today is, I don't know if it's the right term, classified to run at 260,000 gallons.
Yes,
Right, makes it a Class B plant.
yes.
Right,
That's the permitted speediest flow.
Permitted speedy
Yes.
flow, right. We add the extra consumption into the plant.
Yes,
I believe I read the report right. In theory, we're approaching now 220,000.
correct, which is under 260.
Which is still under 260.
Correct,
Here's my concern.
yeah.
And my concern is, at our plant, we've built the plant for expansion and have a buffer.
Absolutely. You
Right?
get too close to the capacity.
And that buffer, let's just say the previous buffer, just for math, was 160,000 to 260, so we had 100,000 gallons per day buffer built into the plant. going forward, even by adding immediate filters, we go to 220. Now we're down to only a 40,000 gallon per day buffer. So while your costs represent enough to handle the capacity that we need to bring on new development, it's eradicated the buffer that the village had built.
Yes, and so that's certainly you as a village and how you want to take perspective of your capacity and use it. Your plant absolutely is designed to operate that at that level. So
Correct.
as far as its effectiveness at that rate, the other components, obviously not referring to the media filters, but the other components, they'll absolutely operate appropriately at that level.
No,
So I
and
think
I
the question
understand.
is
My concern
additional
is-
flows coming in
No.
and
The
you're,
40,000 gallons, we will take that in stormwater.
Right, that's,
You know, that buffer will be absorbed during some.
oh, so,
well, I have two concerns. One is
Okay.
the one that
yes.
John just brought up, is we get storm surges.
Absolutely. And
right?
that has to
And
do.
so
Yes.
you wouldn't think you have a storm surge in a wastewater treatment plant, but we do.
Oh, I'm very,
Yeah. I mean,
very,
for the-
very
the public-
familiar with
The
that.
public may not know that we, when we have a storm, if it's a significant
When
rainstorm,
did September go?
our volume goes up dramatically, and it impacts our operations, right? And so we're
your
building
average
that.
flow though, Gary, as presented, includes all of
Yes,
those storms.
I know, you include that storm surge kind of into it. But my concern is still, we're giving up our buffer.
I
And that
understand
buffer that we
your-
had, that over the years, the village has been attuned to building and creating that capacity. So that someday we could absorb, whether, let's just say Platt Avenue, we're putting in wastewater, we're putting in water, and we can absorb Livingston, Chestnut, Platt, right, as added, increased into our wastewater treatment plant. Where now, if going forward, if we bring the new development in, we've eliminated that possibility. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Is that, all right. So you
Yes.
answered my question.
Yes, but I do want to talk about the stormwater issue, because I think that is important to understand that when we talk about the flow calculations, we definitely have acknowledged the stormwater issue. We
Yep,
wrote quite a
I got
bit
that.
about it in that, and what happens to the flows coming into the plant. I think it is important to note that the place where I&I is introduced is generally in the collection system and is typically not associated with the internal collection system of new development. So when we talk about especially a low-pressure collection system, which is what the Grassmere has proposed, that would be expected to add little, but more likely zero stormwater inflow to your system. So while,
Independent.
exactly, because it's a pressurized system, so if there was a hole there, it would go
Yeah.
out, not
Right.
in.
Yeah.
So, well, we don't want that to happen, certainly, but
They're called
they would not
leaks.
be adding.
We have current deficiencies that we have
Yes.
to manage
In the,
anyway.
and that definitely is a goal. However, and would be a great thing we could talk about as far as how much is your average flow impacted by those rainfall days? And it certainly is. And you can see that impact, and I have some discussion, but you could be far worse. Clearly, this
Yes.
is not an intended combined community. They, have a crazy percentage of increase when a storm occurs. So you do see a peak, but even speaking of other communities I work with that are I&I impacted, your peak is not so bad compared to other folks. So that's absolutely an issue that's important to track down, and as improvements in the village get made, that'd be good to see where we can eliminate that I&I. I&I also, this is just focusing at the, which is infiltration and inflow, the wastewater components themselves. Another piece of this analysis which Grassmere's engineers would be presenting would be the collection system itself, and how much flow is in the pipes during a rainfall event and their flow being added would be something that they would need to address to that conversation. Because things need to go from here to there, as they say, downhill, so.
No, it's pressurized, they can't run uphill.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, their flow will get into
Yeah.
no matter what, but then it's, we got to make sure it goes downhill. So.
Aaron, I'm not sure if this was part of the charter, the work, but I know that our plant manager, Brian Bacama, has discussed and expressed concern about the intake. In other words, the quality of it, and the impact that it might have on the biology that we use right now, the bugs, to manage organically how we manage the treatment of the sewage today.
When you say the intake, do you mean the inflow at the headworks?
That's what I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we can't help ourselves. Even though we know that it's not strictly a capacity issue, we had to know some of the concerns we observed there. And this very much so is the way wastewater is going. Ragging materials are on the uprise due to baby wipes, which there's huge campaigns out there that your toilet is not a trash can. Wipes do not belong in there, and everything else, nothing else goes in there. But wipes have really changed the characteristics of wastewater such that we start talking about, how we specify things. You used to concern about passing a solid, a 3-inch solid. Now we talk about ragging, and the wipes particularly, and the increase in ragging materials, the grinder will grind it apart, and then it finds itself and recombines. And there's been amazing stories in the news about, blockages of London sewer about, these massive baby wipes. But I go to conferences, and this is what we talk about. I told you, you're not going to find any kittens here. So that...
Detergents I think detergents and,
Yeah,
and cleaning.
Things have really
chemicals,
changed, the characteristics of influent wastewater. So what we noted is that instead of grinding, where the technology is going is removing the ragging at the headworks, and that's a climbing screen. That definitely something we noted,
Okay.
and we put in here as an observation. That building's pretty neat. The headworks building is kind of modular. It's tall in there.
Yeah.
The dumpster's the only thing that it'd be challenging to figure out exactly how you'd fit that in, but the height and what you've got in there, it's enough to put a climbing screen in, but that's not that's an expense, but that's definitely the way even smaller wastewater facilities are going, getting the rags out instead of grinding them up.
Is that last device that you talked about, is that the automatic influent bar screen?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
And, there's other plants, we could go check those out and what those do and what those look like that are nearby.
So I have a question.
Because I'm sure you want to do that. I do. Sorry.
We should take a tour.
For you. First of all,
Yeah.
I'm very impressed with your detail and depth of knowledge.
Oh, sorry, Paul, thanks.
And so please understand where I'm coming from. So I'm
Yeah.
looking at, your summary letter, which also is very informative. It has a lot of enticing details. And I'll take it offline with John and bring that to you. But from my point of view, in a letter like this, I'd like to basically see what I'd say a top-line report. So this is, again, detailed. But I want to see, some summary of the scope, some summary of the basic findings. And quite frankly, you have a lot of very enticing observations, and I think they're, rather critical, that point to what the strengths of the report are, and the scope, obviously, but also some of the things that, are rightly pointed out and very professionally pointed out as, let's say, things that need to be addressed, right? So you have a list of things that basically said, the Grassmere folks should do X, Y, and Z, and so on and so forth. But from the standpoint of, communicating to the public at large as well as to the board, I think, we would want to talk a little bit about the letter and try and highlight it in a way that, the board members, myself included, who appreciate the technical detail, and I think you've really done a great job on that, but to distill it down into a kind of staff summary type of thing where in a page, we get the message, especially, certain things that basically say, gee, there could be some potential impact of pressure. There's certainly a concern about having enough water pressure for fire issues and whatnot. And those are observational things that as professionals are very meaningful to us. So I'm going to speak with John a little bit, and don't take it as a criticism, but as a way of, I think, putting together in a digestible format something that's very important to us.
Absolutely, and we will continue to communicate and get it as, down to the bullet points as we can. Clearly,
Yeah.
I might have some problems with that sometimes. That's
It's not a problem. We always work from the details up, so don't
Yeah.
worry.
So along with Paul's point, you made some assumptions,
Yes,
and those assumptions are based on what we know today from the project.
yes.
And so when do we know that I think
Yeah.
to answer Paul, when will we know that we've nailed down all of those assumptions so that we know we have a valid data going forward?
Certainly from the perspective of our analysis is based on flow and the flow that the applicant has said that they are going to contribute. If that number changes, they'd be held just like we use an assumption and hold an assumption for any of the other previous developments that have come in front of you. If that number changes, and that's obviously creates a large issue for everything. So I think that would be back to Grassmere to come back and say, we're committing to this number and we will not be producing any more than this number, and they'd provide the backup of that
Another thing that
number.
I'm really driving at, which I understand perfectly, okay, A plus B equals C, change B, C changes, right? But underneath this, I think, is also an assessment of some risks, quite frankly. That is, beyond the numbers changing, you point out some things that, gee, we're not quite so certain about, and you list out a bunch of things that this would make this better. You also say, gee, it would be beneficial if we had these couple of things from Grassmere. What I'm interested in are those things, but also from the standpoint of what you got from us, quite frankly. You said, we got these things from the village, and, should we have gotten, an update to these things and those sorts of things. So it's almost as though saying we've assessed it based on the assumptions you've given us, but here are the open issues, here's where there might be some risk, and quite frankly, things like where even though, there's a significant pressure drop or something like that, well, we'll get by, but how serious is that? And quite frankly, the highlighting that there might be some issues of dirty water or something like that. I think we need to, just have your observations there as professionals as to what the level of risk there is. If it's, red, yellow, green, as high level as that, that's fine. But to communicate, to the board, but also to the village residents, okay?
Well, I think absolutely an important thing is this letter's been shared, this was the assessment, but also there's many topics in there that are a more high-level assessment where we are asking for Grassmere's response.
Right.
And I think that's a very important next step is for the components that they are taking general responsibility for to be able to respond to these comments and provide the whole picture
Right.
as far as moving forward, where they stand on those issues.
Great.
So,
Thank you.
great. Any other questions?
I just want to clarify, Mayor, one of the questions you were asking, because it seems like we have two issues, if I'm hearing you correctly. One is a technical issue about how to handle the inflows and all that good stuff. But the other one is sort of a policy issue in that over the years, the village has made it a policy to have a fair amount of excess capacity with the idea that additional parts of the village would be eventually hooked up. Specifically, you're talking about Platt. And
Oh, they
places
were
up there.
examples, but.
Right, and that was kind of village policy, that we would always maintain some of that buffer you're talking about was with the idea that the village would be including not simply the new housing, but some of the existing housing would eventually come online. And so the question is, I guess, how much do we want to eat, if at all, into that reserve capacity that we've been holding basically for future village hookups. So,
I think that's exactly my point.
okay. I just want to separate the two,
You got
the two
it.
issues, okay.
So I think we as a board have to also answer that question
Yep.
to ourselves.
Absolutely, and then I have a great place to, document that and move
Okay.
forward based on that. Absolutely. We did our best with the, how, the information we collected, but I think this is a very important issue.
Right.
As far
Because it
as,
takes us from, if you want to use real numbers, we're at 134,000 gallons a day, and we're rated at 260, and then we go to 220,000 gallons a day, and we're still rated at 260.
absolutely.
So-
And the level of planning, as far as you all know much better than I, as far as this conversation with maybe this street and this street, that if those are real conversations that have been, discussed for a while, then that's a project that kind of exists and has a future intention, that this has not captured that future intention.
Correct.
So that should be,
Okay.
that absolutely can be accommodated.
Are
in
those
this.
actual projects?
No, the question is
The
why.
future intention,
Yes, as you know, you're on the board, John, you're on the board, you know we don't have them listed as current projects, right? It's just where were the future intention of the village of Rhinebeck to be able to have that capacity?
Generally, and this is certainly, it is an absolutely legitimate thing for a village to serve its residents by a municipal collection system and continued use of on-site systems. As far as an acceptable plan for serving a village wastewater, that is an absolutely recognized methodology. However, the village is responsible for noting how do all of our parcels in the village get served. So that is an obligation by the laws of the state of New York for village law of how do you address your parcels. And again, the methodology the village is using is a perfect legitimate way, but that is your obligation to say, how do we serve our parcels that are in the village boundary, and how will we continue to serve them? And so it's absolutely a task that is on your plate. And if there's thoughts on, well, they're going to continue to use on-site systems, and this is the portion that's using a collection system, but in the future, we would like to see them transition to a municipal system, then that's absolutely something that should be captured in here.
The village has reached that crossroad at this point now. It's always the demand dictated the size of the plant. We're at the point now where we actually have a requested demand who now is going to dictate our upgrade. And so we're at that point now where, financially, we need to start really looking at other sources to expand that plant, considering the public that we're still responsible for.
And John and I have talked, and we can pick this up again, but certainly, we think there's worthwhile grant opportunities to try to, get to that planning stage when you're looking at, holistically what your options are.
Yeah,
So.
there's definitely things we can do.
And things I know you've looked at in the past, so.
Right. Well, we can replace the old system with a newer system and use half the space that we have. And there's ways to make improvements, but we have to be able to fund it and make it,
Yes.
do that.
Get through that study phase.
Right. So where do we go from here? I'm not sure where we go.
I've had preliminary, again, end of the day, 4:30 today, some preliminary feedback on this from the engineers representing Grassmere, GPI. So we'll, and I think that is what needs to be presented next to the village, is getting their formal response, not only on this document, but the other comments in the overall letter. And then really, it's their move next as far as how they're going to be planning to address these comments. And so I think that needs to be communicated.
Is there like a timeframe, like a solid shovel-ready date?
Not that I'm aware of at this point, but,
Yeah, well, a lot of it has to do with planning board approval. We're on the docket for next month.
okay.
So we're at the point really where we need to make a decision as to whether this is going to work or not. We'd like to do it, but if it's not going to work out, we really need to know that.
Right. Well, I mean, clearly, we have the capacity, so we have to make those decisions along with you. I think John's question was good in terms of, I mean, are we looking a year, 2 years, or are you're at site plan now, we got to go, you know,
We're looking for a spring construction start date. We wouldn't need to start this part of it this spring, but we're looking for a spring.
Because we're getting feedback that it's another 2 years from now.
From,
the seeker, I mean, has seeker been started?
yeah, we've already got an approved site plan. We're going back for an amended site plan. So seeker's already been completed. We're doing some addendum studies, which have already been submitted, and we've got the revised site plan in front of the planning board right now. So we made a couple modifications, which we're thinking that we should be through the review process by the early part of next year. And we're moving forward on the design docs, on the CDs, with the idea that the work's going to be starting in spring.
Well,
Can I have your name for the minutes, please?
Jonathan Match.
Thank you.
Jonathan,
Yeah.
what was kind of confusing was, we actually talked to the town engineer.
Yeah.
And so there had been some question of how the village really wasn't a solid entity in the decision-making. You know what I mean? So it was kind of confusing because, you know, normally we would be approached during seeker, you get more feedback from us. And was there another plan involved that didn't require municipal sewer, where you were primarily focusing on on-site treatment?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. The plan that we have approved had on-site septic. So we've got an approved plan for
Okay.
half of what the ultimate build-out would
Okay.
be. We're now going back for approval, showing a full build-out, and that changed the economics.
But I believe with a change of that magnitude, wouldn't seeker be required again?
Well, it's a little more complicated than that. We did the original studies for full build-out, then we went back for site plan approval, having the special use permit already granted and the secret review completed for the full project.
Right.
We went back and got the first phase approved. Now, instead of just building the first phase, we're going back and saying we want to build it all at once. And that's the site plan that's before the planning board right now, showing the full build-out.
And so you could amend, you're going to amend the seeker that you have already approved?
Yes.
Going to the original.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, so basically, it's some additional studies to complement the full seeker review that's already done. There's a couple areas that we moved a couple buildings around, so we did some additional archaeology work, had to do some additional wetlands and habitat work, stuff like that. But those are just attached as.
So John, the secret review would not involve the village at all?
It would have if we were part of the waste control.
Of the design. So the first, we weren't part of we weren't included because it was on-site. But now I think we need to be included into this amended seeker.
I mean, the engineer.
Yeah,
that-
yeah, the,
You are.
We are, okay, well, we haven't been,
Okay.
so that's a concern I guess I have.
so now, because you're now an involved agency.
Sure.
Yeah, so you're now an involved agency.
We're like a primary agency now.
Well, yeah, I mean, or physically it is, but you're definitely an involved agency.
Yeah.
So.
But again,
List would've changed.
we found out a lot of information during some engineering reviews, interviews, and we were kind of concerned because we weren't really, there was a lot of information that we weren't privileged to. So I guess we need to
We need to
really sit
engage.
down and figure out
Yeah,
at what part of the approval process does the village have to be involved in with respect to seeker. So, and we're kind of in the dark with that.
Let's
So-
work to get that straightened
Yeah,
out.
okay.
Right.
I don't think that's your to-do, that's us working with Jonathan and the town board and the planning board, town planning board.
Yeah, the town planning board to grant approval needs to know how we're gonna handle wastewater. So that's just part of the secret.
Yeah.
And what we've represented is that we're with you and we're, I
Right.
guess we could come to a solution and all of that. If that didn't work, then we should come back and show something else.
So who are you dealing with on the town level? Because normally the town really should be approaching us and we should be on the same page with them. Are you dealing with the planner
It's
or is
the
there an
one-
engineer?
Yeah, there's Ray Jerkowski, who's the engineer, and then there's the town planner, who's new, Jim Levy.
Okay, because Ray thinks that your project's going to be ready in 2 years.
Built in 2 years.
Oh, I thought it was going to be,
Yeah, I didn't get that.
Starting in 2 years.
That's what I thought.
No, we're starting this spring, we want to be built in 2 years.
Okay.
It's really 2 years from the spring.
All right. so our engineer needs to get with their engineer
Yes.
and iron this out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so there's no action tonight. We're looking for more information, a comeback that brings all of this together and addresses the concerns I think that we brought up this evening, and then how we can move
Do we
forward.
have a timeline for that?
I think there's the technical piece and the issues we've addressed, and I think that the idea would be to talk about this as ASAP.
Yeah, let's.
There is, though, from the village board level, the discussion about capacity, reserve capacity, future capacity, and that's something we definitely need the guidance from the village back on that.
Right.
So that's got to be a give and take between us and
Yeah.
the village to make sure we're understanding how you want to approach this topic. We all need to know that.
But what about the process of secret review and our participation in that?
I agree that we should have a conversation about that, because at some point, when it changed, it sounds like somehow the village, being an involved agency, fell through a crack of some sort that.
So let me just say, I'm George Rosenhausen, attorney. The environmental assessment form, which the planning board now has, which they got back on July 1st, has listed the village as an involved agency. So they should have circulated to you as an involved agency. If it hasn't happened, we'll go back to the town planning board and make sure that they do.
It has not come across my desk.
Okay.
Very plain and simple. I have not seen it.
That's exactly what the
Yeah.
problem
But
is.
we have identified you as an involved agency.
Okay, that's great.
Back 3-4 months ago.
We just haven't been involved.
I didn't mean to suggest where the crack was, just that there
Yeah.
definitely seemed to be.
And just so everybody knows,
It went.
what Aaron's talking about tonight, I think it came to all of us Friday, right? So this is not something that's been circulated for a month. We've had, 3 days to look at it, right? And so it's very preliminary from my point of view for us to make any determination based on a 3-day, but your review was helpful for this evening
Oh, yeah.
and timely.
Great.
I'd still like to get a sense of when we're going to hear back from somebody about the secret review. I think we should put a date on it and basically ask to get a report, progress report, something even before
Well,
the next board meeting.
Yeah, it's going to be driven by, if their desire is for a spring start,
Well, but-
somebody's got to put a schedule that backs up to there so that we're aware of
Council
it.
just said that he was going to follow up with the town, right?
Well, yes, okay, but when? I'm sorry, because you basically sound as though it's definitely you're digging, and, we've been left out of the loop, so to speak, on this for whatever reason, and I'm just thinking we should have a date when you get back to us. Somebody gets back to us and says, okay, here's where we are in all this, and it seems like you have a definite date, and I don't see any involvement by the village.
Let's have another update at our December meeting. Can you bring, so Jonathan, is that you coming forward at our December meeting?
Let's talk tomorrow, and
All
we'll
right.
figure out, and John,
If you can
figure out what would be the most
Yeah,
helpful.
send us your schedule with the town.
So
To the planning board.
So I'd like to have something on our December board meeting.
Yeah.
Okay?
No,
Let's try to keep it moving.
Or sooner.
Or soon.
You can talk to John anytime.
Oh, I know how to get
Yeah.
in now.
Both Johns, how's that?
But it'll be public, and that's why I want it on the board. We can have all these work projects going on, but I want a public review again in December.
Yeah, and I can assure the board that the flow numbers that we provide for branding are very conservative. I mean, we're probably going to be closer to 60 than 70 that we should. So we made every one of those assumptions, conservative assumptions, so that those numbers are not going to go up. And this is our full roadmap.
Okay.
Great.
Thanks.
Actually, just one quick question. The line or the route that the pipe's going to take from Grassmere to us, has that been examined or engineered? Because,
I think,
crosses a stream.
If I may, that this topic is pretty significant, and we want to make sure that that's been addressed. As part of the letter, and I know something that Jonathan's working on right now is looking at the collection system connectivity. their system is proposed to be a pump system, low-pressure sewer system. Then it would enter gravity, into the gravity collection system or into a pump station somewhere. And that's part of what I believe GPI is supporting the Grassmere project with. So that's something, certainly that needs to be presented and would be asked. But there are bridge crossings.
You have a stream, the last one, right?
Yeah, so I think that is a important issue, and as I understood it, that was being addressed or was, but it's definitely in the GPI's list of the things they're assisting.
And I think, so just for clarity, I think we need to solve this problem first.
Right, but I'm seeing the same, and then the question would be, whose planning board looks at, or who looks at those engineering and says, yes, we're comfortable, because now it's back on our property?
Yes.
Does that be us all the way?
Correct.
Okay.
It is, you are doing a collection system expansion, you are changing, so also, regulatory agencies get involved with that.
Right.
So
Oh,
there
yeah.
are, so they as well, would be one of the folks who would do those plans in addition to, on behalf of the village.
And
You have regulatory agencies.
And DOT and,
And DOT, of course.
Could you, sorry, Joe.
I'm sorry.
So could you in your plan report back on December, please help us understand also, the scope of CEQA review as it pertains to the village? So we have a clear notion about, just how far it goes, what we're expected to do, as opposed to what they may be expected to do.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's a very important issue that I think
Yeah. We
now
just
it's
need
very
to understand
clear
it.
to me that I also had missed this fact. Had my head in the sewer. But I was a little focused, and I knew this was a big topic. Certainly, Brandy has been a little more watching this project from the higher level view, and so, but she and I will definitely, first thing in the morning, be discussing this.
and if we need to set a special meeting, we'll do it. Okay?
Thank you, yeah. That's
Uh,
good.
Well, short walk away.
Yes,
Take
yeah.
a warmer next.
Don't lose track of the details.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Very much.
Okay. Next part of our schedule is to go to public comment. If there's anybody in the public that would like to make a public comment. Yes, Gail. Come on up, Gail. You got to come up, Gail. Yes, please.
Over here? Over there?
Over there.
Yeah, viewers that don't see you.
Okay, my name is Gail Saucier, better known as a Realtor with Berkshire Hathaway in this village. I am representing Rhinebeck Rotary this evening, and as the past president, and now the chair of the Christmas tree lighting event being held in the Rhinebeck Bank parking lot. Few impediments have come my way with getting, and number one, I'm completely new to this. The Chamber of Commerce decided to say, no, we don't want to do it any longer. And since a couple of the members of the chamber belong to Rotary, have mentioned that maybe Rotary should take it over. So it's like, okay, we'll do that, because we're always looking to be part of the community and also to gain more recognition. We're not just out here, well, actually, we pretty much have conquered polio in the world. I think we're down to 1 or 2 cases in the world now. So that was our objective. But here, we're always looking to gain new memberships and let new members and let people know what we do in general, which is supporting a lot of the organizations, Wheels on Meals being one of them. So at any rate, me being new to this, the lady at the that is now the manager of the bank being new to this, we're just about through the entire process of getting things set up. We'll have half a dozen to 7 vendors, and hopefully, Joe Daly will be there announcing the event. Santa will be there, and there'll be a parade coming in. Now, the fellow who is the head of the bank, Michael McDermott, is, I think he's getting a little tired of this annual event in his parking lot, because there's a lot of liability involved with this. We do have insurance, all the people setting up the tables, whether it's the Interact Club or our membership committee, have to prove insurability as well. But in one of my communications with him, he mentioned that, now there's a parade, a large parade. So my point in being here tonight is to suggest that maybe this should be held in a different venue, like the village parking lot in future years. I'm sure we'll get through this year, and until I have an actual chat with him after the event to see how well I've managed it, if we can extend it. But my feeling is that the bank's getting a little tired. And so I thought, well, we have a village parking lot. Would the village be interested in hosting this event in the future? And that's my point. So don't expect an answer this evening. But it's, food for thought. Because, unfortunately, I got a later start on this, but paperwork just didn't get shuffled in the right way to the bank. So we're catching up with everything at this point in time. But I don't want to find out next year, and I suppose we start the process in June, right, Pat? That it's like, no more. We have not had an incident so far. How many years has this been going on? But, unfortunately, if we do, I'm sure the bank will say, because they have a tremendous liability to begin with. They won't give us security. We have to hire our own security. And pretty much man the project from 7 a.m. to keep cars out of the parking lot. So it would be nice if we had a little more help with that. But we'll take care of it. And I understand, as the folks at the Chamber said to me, good luck. So it's all yours. Anyway, that's my point, and might be something that you may want to consider in the future.
Well, it evolved a lot this year. I mean, we split it up into parcels this year, and the village took over the responsibility for the parade, right? So I think we're going to have to continue these discussions.
Yep.
And figure out for the future.
Yeah, because unfortunately, most of the parking lots are privately owned. There's only
Correct.
one that's the village, so.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Well, quick, do you have a commitment for December 1st?
From the bank?
Yes.
I should have it tomorrow.
Okay.
So I have commitment from everybody else.
So as far as we know, we're still on.
As far as we know, we're still on.
Very good.
So
Okay.
you'll be the first to know if we're not.
Thanks, Gail.
Thank you.
Susan? John, excuse me. If you don't mind staying just till we go, I'll jump to that quick, right after this.
I don't know.
Is that the door?
Hi, I'm Susanna. I live on Manor Road, and I have a couple questions. The first one is on the corner of Arnett and Knollwood. I don't know what's going on there. There's been cones there for months. It looks
That's
like
a good
there's
question, I
hole in
agree.
the road.
Good question, because I've asked also, why are those cones still there?
And there is a hole in the road. The cones keep getting moved. I'm not sure how, no, I'm like literally like knocked over or moved
Yeah.
away from the hole. I
that.
don't know. Oh, it is for you. I was wondering what is
Yeah, so
happening
We
there.
had a catch basin repair, and there had been a section that we kind of missed that undermined. And so whatever repair we made semi-collapsed. It's stable, we just don't want heavy vehicles going over it. It's on the list to get done before the end of the month.
Okay, because I was,
Should be
with
completely
the
repaired.
cold and all this that's going on right now, I wasn't sure how stable it was.
Yeah, the contract, no, it's stable.
Okay.
But the contractor that we paid to repair it needs to go back and repair it again.
Aren't you glad you stayed?
What's that?
I said, aren't you glad you stayed?
Yeah, no, that's good, I know, but it's definitely on the,
Okay, thanks. So the other question is, when is leaf pickups getting started? The roads are pretty narrow right now. Oh, John, I'm so sorry. I said I had nothing for you.
So leaf pickup had started October 1st, and we're continuously just picking up leaves. During this time, we have, ironically, my highway department are all hunters. And so what happens is, this is the busiest season, the vac truck continues to go out and pick up leaves. And then in the next week or two, we will do an all-out, hands-on-deck cleanup of the entire village. Theoretically, we are really supposed to stop December 1st. We don't. That December, we ask everybody to try to get everything out by the end of November, and then we just continually just pick everything up until everything's picked up.
Okay, so you're not doing like the north side, south side?
No, we are.
You are,
Like, for
okay.
instance, we just did the south side today. We will do leaves the north side tomorrow.
But I think, no, but just to clarify, they're not doing the weekly trade-offs.
Right.
Right now, it's continuous
That's what I-
throughout
yeah,
the
that's what
village.
I was wondering about.
The weekly trade-offs, no, that's over.
Yeah.
Because all of the south side is not done.
No, as you know.
The south side in over 2 weeks.
That's
Some
why,
of the streets.
that's why I was asking, because our area has been, our road is pretty narrow already, and now it's pretty much one way,
Right.
so.
They did some spot checking because Knollwood, right that corner where it's hard to get back to the elementary school, both sides of the roads were covered with leaves yesterday. They were gone today, but no other streets were done.
No, the streets, yeah, all right.
Yeah, Manor has definitely not been
Yeah,
done in
okay.
quite a while.
And it's, again, it's a
Like, leaves are
continuous-
back in the yards again.
Yeah, well, that's,
We've had some wind.
but yeah, we're out there. I'm pretty much fully staffed now.
Okay.
I do have another employee taking off for 2 weeks. It's kind of tough to manage, but we'll
Okay,
be done.
that's what I was just curious about,
Yeah.
some of my,
Suzanne, I'm going to put a plug in for our highway department because we cannot control how leaves fall.
oh, right,
And
and
the rate
after that
that they
big
fall.
storm on
And
October
if you look at the
31st.
rate of the fall just recently because of the 2 storms that we've had,
Yeah.
it's inundated, so I see our trucks out there and I know that they're working.
Okay.
And as fast as they do a street, the street gets filled up again. In fact, we had a wonderful Veterans Day and it was a beautiful day. And everybody took advantage of that as well because the leaves were just incredible.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering, because like I said, our area has not seen the pickup, but
Yeah.
I didn't know if other areas had been doing it. So just a couple
Yeah.
neighbors mentioned it. I come for the neighborhood.
No, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Hearing none, we're going to close the public comment session. And in order just to, I want to just wrap up with Karen and then go into a estimate for the stair railing so that Karen and John can kind of move on if they so choose to, right? So you're good for a couple more minutes, John?
Yes.
Okay, the treasurer's report is for the period ending October 31st. The tax collector's account ended the month with $962,153.31. The general fund ended the month with $49,129.02. The water fund ended the month with $303,159.71. And the sewer fund ended the month with $521,631.84. Vouchers presented for payment, including prepayments, in the general fund, total $74,263.24. In the water fund, $36,755. In the sewer fund, $45,441.51. There was 2 escrow payments made in the amount of $4,430. The water main project had a bill for $4,300. The water lagoon, $1,775. A bond payment of principal and interest for the police station was made in the amount of $50,350. The ADA lift had the final bills of $74,380.65. And the grant for the tree inventory, we had a bill for $1,200. And a capital expense from the street department in the amount of $37,500. It was a very busy, very busy accounts payable month. An operating statement is provided with the revenue and expenditures through November 12th. The water and wastewater billing and adjustments have been reviewed and signed off by the water and wastewater department liaisons and are presented for authorization.
I'd like to make a motion to accept it on behalf of trustee Nunaker, the water vouchers.
Second motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? So carried.
And I would make a motion that we accept the wastewater numbers as presented this evening by our treasurer.
Second motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Okay, and finally, I just have a few budget amendments for the board to authorize. From the 3620, the building inspector salary account, and that will be from the revenue account to allocate the shared service with Red Hook of $2,883. In the fire department EMS equipment, to allocate 2 donations of $500 for $1,000 for that. And in the 1622.01, the building contractual expense for the village hall, I'm requesting a transfer of $3,500 for additional items for fencing and benches at the village hall, and that will be coming from the 1990.1 contingency account. And I have one transfer in the water fund from 832002 for $3,000 to the 832004, which is these non-employees, which is over budget for $3,000.
I'd like to make a motion to accept all the budget transfers as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Carried. Very good. All right, thank you, Karen. And so while Karen is still here, I'd like to move something up onto the agenda a little bit earlier, so John could leave if he would like. As going along with the ADA lift, one of the things that came apparent after all the equipment was removed was our stairwell, our stair railing, coming up the second floor is no longer in compliance in terms of height and then the width, the span of the rails. So John is here, he can address this, but I'll just basically say we went out and we researched for people to give us an improvement to either replace the railing or do something to fix it. And replacing the railing, there was like several companies that could do it. It was in the range of 10?
Close to between 12 to 14,000 to replace the entire
Right.
rail in one component.
So we then took on an estimate to try to fix the railing, raise it in height, and put additional bars in. And there's only a few people that locally that can do that. We were able to get a quote from one after reaching out to everybody. And that quote came from R&B Welding Services. And that is for they gave us an estimate of $5,932 to raise the railing to its proper height. And then, if it's correct, we're going to tack weld additional spacers in there to meet the spacing requirement to also make that.
Right, dimensionally, the entire rail doesn't comply with the building code. Primarily, it's just too short, and the openings are just way too wide. And so the modification to the rail has to be done in sections, which is a pretty detailed request. And it really came down to actually one person being able to do the particular work that we needed. There are bigger companies that do iron work, but this particular individual was able, he's a local resident, And the only thing is, the work does require a lot of cutting, a lot of exposure, so it has to be done usually when the village hall is completely closed. So it's either weekends or at night. And the work will be done, it'll probably take 2 to 3 days, probably close to 5 to 6 hours per day. And it's going to be very hot, sweaty, sparkly, and messy, you know, but that's what we're looking at.
But he's agreed to do it in off hours,
Yes.
correct?
At the approval of the board.
Right.
Is there a, fire protection type issue with all the?
Yes, there'll be drop cloths, you know, again, and Pat probably knows a lot about arc welding, but, it's focused on one particular section. We do have fire suppression and awareness.
And fire department here?
Yeah, we got the guys right next door, we have fire extinguishers everywhere, but it'll be, safe work practices will be implemented.
So I'd like to make a motion to accept the bid from RB Welding Services LLC for $5,932 to bring our current railing into compliance.
Second that motion.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? So carried. Thank you. Thank you for your patience in waiting.
So would you like to authorize that to be used from fund balance for that? So our balance in our contingency after we've just done this budget adjustment is $9,500. So you can do one or the other, but we still have 6 months left in the fiscal year. So it may be better to use fund balance for that. It was an unforeseen project.
It does meet the definition because it's a one-time expense and doesn't incur any other additional expenses. So it meets the criteria for a fund balance expense. So what does the board think? Any-
Yeah,
Yeah, I think we should probably come from there,
I
yeah.
think it's a good suggestion.
It's a one-time capital.
I just hesitate to complete the contingency when we still have 6 months left.
So I'd like to make a second motion then to pay the $5,932 from our fund balance.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Thank you.
Hi, John.
Good night. All right, police report. I'm going to summarize some of this stuff. It's a busy month. Done. No. Total number of incidents, it's amazing. In the town, 18. In the village, 135. Tickets were 14 in the town, 47 in the village. Arrests were 4, and total number of accidents were 6. So, I mean, there's a lot of things happening, but the numbers speak for a lot. There was extra coverage required by our police department because of the events, the Fall Foliage Half Marathon. 1,700 runners, I believe, participated in that. Sheep and Wool Festival, which I think everybody experienced in one way or another. National Take Back Day here at our police department. We accumulated 22 pounds of prescription drugs that we were able to not enter into the waste stream, and we were able to collect with our drop box here, at the police station. So that's cool. And then the police also helped with brush cleanup, and we had Halloween night, which was a warm night as well.
Oh, yeah. Busy.
So a lot of activity going on. We do use a speed trailer. We had it set up on Asher Road. We recorded 690 cars. The average speed for that was 36 mile per hour. And the total vehicles above 30 was 607. And most of them, though, were between 31 and 40. Probably the most important issue I want to make the board aware of is that I'm not sure everybody's been following it in the newspapers or whatever, but there's criminal justice reform that's going into effect on January 1st. The criminal justice reform effort that was passed by the New York State, our New York State governor, is finally being rolled out so that we understand what's going to happen. And I just want to make everybody aware that aware that there's going to be additional demand on our police department because of these actions. Those additional demand are going to be required for extra personnel to be here at different times of the, for courts, because now what happens is what would before where we could arrest somebody, bring them in, and process them, we can no longer do that. They're given an appearance ticket. And then they come back in 15 days, and then at that time, we have to arrest and process. So we're going to be doing extra people on staff when they have to come back in at that 15 interval, because we have to be available at nights to be able to process them to do that. There is some justification for this, because the justification is there's too many people in our jails, which I think we've all seen. It drives the cost up, and this will dramatically reduce people that are in our jails and keep our county jail system emptier, but it's going to add more cost to our village to be able to support this come January 1st if it still goes forward. I'm working with NICOM on this, because NICOM is engaged as well to figure out what the impact is and see if we can do anything at either the county level or state level to get remuneration for these laws that are being passed on us. And just a simple thing like they want to increase our upload speed. Currently, our upload speed is like 11 megabits, right? They want us to go to 50. They want a 5 times improvement in our upload speed. We don't even know if our internet supplier can give that to us. But that's a requirement that we have to meet to be able to be in this program, which we have to be in. So anyways, I want to make everybody aware that the criminal justice reform going into face in January is going to, create some issues for us. And I'll keep everybody informed as that goes on. Any questions on police?
Is that going to push us into overtime hours, or are they going to reschedule? Or
It's going to put our police working more hours than what they already are working. Mm-hmm. They're not overtime hours for most of them, but we'll be scheduling and they'll be working more hours.
Okay.
Already we have several that have to work more hours as a result of what's going on in the village, but it will drive up our hours for our part-time police. Okay? Court summary, tickets that were completed for both court sessions were mailed in for the month were 127. So revenue from the state was $4,449. Okay. Fire department, let me just 2 seconds. This is for our village board meeting tonight. For the month of October 2019, there were a total of 88 calls. 29 were fire calls, 57 were EMS, 2 were motor vehicle accidents, and they responded 8 times for mutual aid to our sister departments locally. Any questions on fire?
No.
Okay. Building, planning, and zoning. Paul, if you don't mind, I'd like to take the first subject, which is the resolution for short-term vacation rental. Let me just get to that. I can read it here. This is easy. So we need to vote on our short-term vacation resolution, and I'm going to read the resolution, and then we'll move forward. So whereas the attached local law adopting the short-term rental law was introduced by the Board of Trustees in the Village of Rhinebeck on August 13, 2019, and whereas a public hearing was held on September 10, 2019 at 6 p.m. at the Village Hall, 76 East Market Street in Rhinebeck, New York, notice of said hearing having been provided in accordance with the law and at which time all interested parties had an opportunity to be heard. And whereas Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development has reviewed and determined that the action is a matter of local concern. And whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Rhinebeck determined this action to be an unlisted action based on the criteria found in 6 New York CRR, section 617.4, and it's determined that there is no adverse environmental impacts associated with the adoption of this local law, and the village board hereby issues a negative declaration in connection with the adoption of the local law, and now therefore be it enacted by the Board of Trustees of the Village of Rhinebeck the following, that the Village of Rhinebeck short-term rental law Chapter 120 of the Village of Rhinebeck Code entitled Zoning is hereby amended to add a new article as follows, short-term rental, and the attached legislation. I'd like to have a motion to approve.
Motion.
Second,
Second.
discussion. Any discussion? All in favor of the resolution as proposed with the county adjustments?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
Abstained? So carried. Thank you. Please pass this to our clerk for signing. Paul, I'm going to turn the next part up to you.
So for the planning, zoning, building report, October monthly fees report for 2019, October, there were 6 certificates of occupancy in municipal searches for revenues of $800, 19 building permits for $6,141.80, no fire inspections. For the planning board, no escrow fees, and then fees and approvals of $275 for a grand total of revenue of $7,216.80. Would you like me to go on to the engineering update?
If you want? All right. Okay.
Yeah, sure. I'll just make it brief. Originally, we put out an RFP for, as requested, engineering services. We had 7 respondents at the time. I won't list them all now, unless you want me to. But after review of the initial 7, we whittled the list down to 4. I don't think it's common to name the 4 at this point.
You can.
Okay, then fine. So I'll just use your list really quickly. It's the 4 finalists that we had in for interviews are Ty and Bond, Stan Tech Consulting, CT Mail, excuse me, and CPL Architecture. We went through an initial review process, just looking at the technical proposals and the cost proposals, rated them according to 5 criteria: project planning, expertise across all fields, staffing, expertise on areas that are village specialties, and cost. And so we whittled it down to those 4. And then those top 4 firms, we actually posed a subject for further discussion in an in-person oral interview. The subject was, quote, "The village of Rhinebeck is striving to become a walkable, bikeable, and sustainable place to live and work, and wants to develop plans that support this initiative. Given your knowledge of the village, how would you approach this and prioritize with a list of targeted solutions?" And so this, earlier today, we actually had all 4 candidates in. We gave them approximately an hour time, and part of the time was set aside formally for Q&A. We had really quite lively discussion. Very informative discussion, and we found that, the candidates were very responsive, each in their own way. We're still in the process of reviewing that. We had some homework assignments as a follow-up to the oral presentations. So once we get those responses, if we get some, we anticipate to have a second round of discussions among the selection committee. I should point out that Mayor Bassett, myself, and John Fenton are the selection committee, and all 4 presented to all 3 of us, so we're all on the same page, and I think agreed on the homework assignments. So we hope to have more information and possibly a final candidate by the next board meeting.
Yep.
Will you be bringing back all 4, or will you be continuing to whittle the list a bit?
Well, we'll see what they come back with, but I think we're going to whittle the list down after the oral information that comes back from the oral session.
Excellent. Good.
Okay.
Good. Thank you, Paul.
So last but not least, somewhat late addition to the board agenda. It's printed, of course, but it got on a little bit late. But we'd still like to move ahead if no one has any objections, and this is concerning the zoning of the Board of Appeals appointments. So I think everyone knows the history of the zoning board in the sense that for quite some time we've had a vacancy of one of the permanent board members. We felt that that was something that needed to be addressed. We also we're fortunate enough to identify some other candidates that would be interested in the alternative position, but also the permanent positions. I spoke with Colton Johnson myself, the chairman of the board, and we discussed the various candidates, and I think Mayor Bassett also did the same. I think we came to the conclusion that we had some highly qualified folks, and so as a proposed new board, we were actually going to recommend that Kevin Curry, a resident here in Rhinebeck, in fact, a neighbor of mine, and also another gentleman, Christopher Tavener, be appointed as to the board, and that as an alternate appointment, we were going to recommend Lydia Slavey. All three really, I think, would significantly contribute to the board in terms of their depth of expertise and just general intellect, and also, quite frankly, their strong interest in preserving the character of the village. And so I'd like to recommend to the board that those appointments be made.
Second?
Yeah.
Any discussion?
Kevin and Christopher would be the
Yes.
full-time
Yes.
and
To be clear,
the permanent, and the alternate would be.
that's right. So Kevin Curry, so the proposed new board would be Colton Johnson, Jude Merritt, Rachel Cavill, Kevin Curry, and Christopher Tavener, with Larry Garrick and Lydia Slavey as alternates.
I believe Christopher's an architect.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, my
Yes, he is.
architect, yes.
Yeah.
It's really
He was
quite
on helping
quite a
with the
find,
trees.
so to speak.
Yes, yes, he was.
Yes. Yeah. So this is, just further discussion, this is at recommendation of Colton,
Yes.
who's the chair of the committee as well, who interviewed and spoke
Yeah.
as a follow-up.
Extensively done.
Great. All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Very good. Pat, will you call them and swear them in, please? All right, highway.
Okay. We've actually got a quick highway report. The guys have actually been out doing road repairs, repairing catch basins, brush and leaf removal. And I want to reiterate what John Fenton said, that please, if you can have all of your leaves and yard waste out by November 29th, that will actually give the guys a chance to go out and clean it up. It'll probably take, depending upon weather, a week or two to get all that done. But I know that they've been out there. I've seen some huge leaf piles, probably enough on Mulberry Street to fill the vacuum truck once over easily enough. So once again, if all leaves and brush can be up by November 29th, and then the guys will be picking them up into December. We do have a few other pieces of highway business. First off, we earlier the board had approved several positions, call-in positions of laborers and MEOs, mechanical, MEO, motor equipment operator. Motor equipment operator. And John Fenton and I interviewed a candidate, a young man named Dante Knox, who comes to us with experience in air conditioning. He's heat certified, and he also has a Class D CDL, which means he can drive a plow for us. So John and I had a really terrific interview with him. I would like the board to approve the hiring of Dante Knox at $19 an hour for the call-in position of the MEO call-in position. And you can see his resume is on the piece there.
Right.
Have a second?
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Welcome, Dante.
Yes.
And he's being hired as a temporary MEO.
Yes.
Yes, in that slot.
These are
yes.
call-in temporaries.
That's the call-in.
Be clear.
Yes.
Yep, it's the call-in. A couple other pieces of business. As part of the highway study, the highway shared services consolidation study that we did way back in the spring, a couple ideas came forward. First of all, that the village and town should have a standing agreement for how to share equipment, because right now it's generally done ad hoc, and what we were told by the consultants is that's great until something goes wrong. And then suddenly let the finger pointing begin. So they had given us information and basically some drafts that we could work from. I worked them up specifically for us, sent this out to the village attorney, to Rich Olson, who said it looked good. So what I've got here is a draft IMA with the town that I'd like to be able to send to the town that would accomplish this, would codify our highway equipment sharing policy. Basically what it says is that if you borrow a piece of equipment and we don't have a driver on it and you break it, you have to fix it. If we borrow a piece of equipment and it's our driver on it and we break it, then we have to fix it, and lays out some of the liability in case of accidents or other stuff, just so it's clear that we do. It's probably not going to change very much operationally, but at least it gives us a proper framework for going forward. So I don't know if we need a resolution for this or just to bring it forward to the village, to the town, excuse me, to the town.
Well, it's an IMA. We can vote on approving the IMA.
Okay.
Rick,
All right.
this is the highway services?
Yes.
Highway shared services agreement.
Yes, high equipment.
14, severability, this just looks like an incomplete sentence. This looks like there's something missing.
To be valid and enforceable, I think the A is.
To be valid.
And enforceable.
And
There may actually be, period. I think the A is
okay.
straight, it's a straight A.
Okay.
All right, I second. I have a motion. I have a second. Any other discussion?
No, nothing.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? So carried.
Okay. In addition, the committee also suggested that the village and the town change our plowing routes a little bit to make them more efficient. There were three areas of interest. One was Wine Coop Lane, which basically winds in and out of the village. And if you can believe it, past practice was the town plowed their part, skipped over our part, plowed their part, we plowed our part, skipped over their part. Not a good arrangement. Basically, the goal of this arrangement would be that we will alternate years. So one year we'll plow one coop. The next year they'll plow one coop. Basically, we can go on. This is actually an arrangement that I believe the town already has with Clinton, with another road that they have out there. So it's workable. They're into it. It just seemed to make a lot more sense than having us drive over each other's snowpacks. So I'd like a motion to accept the highway alternating service agreement for Wincoop Lane.
So moved.
Second? Have a second?
A second.
Second. All right, any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Carried.
Thank you. I've got one more, and this is down. This is down at the south end of town. Basically, for those of you who know, at the south end of town, on the west side of Route 9, is Mill Road, and Mill Road is partially. First little section is in the village. All the rest is in the town. So basically, once again, our truck went out to do about a quarter mile, came back, turned around, and the town drove over our nicely plowed section and then put down its plow and went over. Likewise, on the south end of town, on Kloss Drive, there's a little section basically that is in the town but not in the village. So it just basically made sense for us to swap those two little pieces of road so that the town will now do all of Mill and we'll do all of Kloss. And that way the guys just have simpler routes and it's all that much more simpler. So that was for the, I'll get there. That was the plowing IMA. So I'd like to make a motion that we accept it and send it over to the town.
Second?
Second, I'll second.
Any discussion? Nobody wants to measure and compare? No. Moving on. All in favor? Aye.
The eyeball test says it's pretty equitable.
Opposed? Abstain? Very good. Thank you, Rick.
Okay, that'll do it.
All right. All right, so I'm going to cover for trustee Nuneker on water. There's only a couple things. There's nothing major. Just a couple things that trustee Nuneker has asked that I cover is that first, our engineer Dennis Larios at Brainier and Larios is exploring getting a beneficial use determination, which is BUD, short, with the DEC to spread the lagoon sludge that we collected in all these very large bags that are down there, to spread them on site, all right? If we do, we can add topsoil and seed it, because actually this sludge, as we heard today from engineering, if you start mixing compost with this or topsoil with it, it becomes a very good topsoil mixture to be able to reuse, and we can use it to resurface the area that we've been using. So we're kind of like reuse, reduce, recycle. I think we're doing all of that with this to push that forward. So, and the price for spreading it is already within the agreement that we had with the person, Pete Rossi, who is filling the bags up. So it's not an increase for us to be able to do that. We have some leftover cash available within our contract, and we want to be able to use that. So we're depending the approval for getting BUD, okay? Second is we're going to have a pre-construction meeting for our water line project on November 14th. This is exciting. It's not a meeting typically for the public, because basically is we're going to do the contract signing, which we've already approved. So if anybody wants to come, you're more than welcome, but we're going to sign the contracts to get our contractor started on quick as possible with the infrastructure rebuilding for our water mains, and that'll be on the 14th. And hopefully, when that all goes through, the water line project will start quickly. Livingston Street, I believe we've announced this before, which will be the first street that will be taken under construction for this connection. Livingston goes from the Montgomery Street Route 9 intersection all the way to Beach, and that's the first road that they'll be starting on, and they tend to do that during the winter and get all the live connections hooked up before spring. And we'll be doing some public outreach on this. We're going to set up some information sharing sessions to get people know, so that they know when we're going to be in front of your house or your house or your house, and what to plan for in terms of disruption and timeliness. So this is exciting. We're getting started, and hopefully the weather hold. Yep. The winter doesn't present a problem for our contractor. His cutting machine is quite large, and can cut through practically any kind of frost levels that we will see, to be able to see. So they don't anticipate having any slowdown due to winter for their project. All right, any questions on that? Exciting stuff. I just also like to make note that since May, we've been working on a contaminant in our water supply, and that we resolved that issue. And that issue was resolved successfully by working with all of the, working with our village our engineers that we hired, which was Ty and Bond, to work on putting together a very concise story that told that basically the collections that were done, the one that presented the high reading that threw us over the limit was an invalid test. And so we were able to prove that with further testing, and even though we couldn't throw that out, they allowed us to culminate all of our testing together, which brought us down to the lower level. And so now we're in compliance with our water treatment and our process. So that final report, which is called the Operation Evaluation Report, has been sent to the county and waiting for their approval. It's already been pre-reviewed by them, but that has gone on. All right. So then the last thing for the water department is we have a request, an RFP. I hope your board has had time to review this. I'll just read the heading for the RFP. This is a request for professional services. The Village of Rhinebeck is soliciting proposals from qualified professionals consulting firms to provide from one entity the technical and financial consulting services to evaluate the village's existing water and wastewater systems for a potential transfer to Dutchess County Wastewater Authority. All right, so this was a grant that we had approved by the county to pay for this, and we are the lead agency. Dutchess County Wastewater, we are working closely with Dutchess County Wastewater Authority on both our water and our wastewater, and we wanted to go out with this RFP. The proposed submission of this would be, we started working back on October 15th, but the goal is submission and questions deadline was November 19th, and a final report will be due on June 8th. All right. Is there any questions on this RFP? Do I have a motion to accept the RFP for professional services to go out?
Second the motion.
Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, Trustee Nunica did have a couple of notes that he sent actually to Pat, and Gary, you and I were copied, that there was just a few things that needed to be tweaked on this. It should not hold up approval, but just as an example, he says, revising the calendar from DCWW, a small draft change. I had just a very minor item. Did you see the email?
I don't remember it, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's just that paragraph at the bottom.
Yeah, it says, Pat, this should be on the agenda. Rich has approved the RFP package. We should approve this going out to bid, subject to the revised calendar. I haven't seen it. Have you seen this? I haven't. Yeah, all right. So we can make those changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
All in favor still going
Oh, yes.
forward?
Yeah.
All in favor of going out with the RFP?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? So carried. All right, Pat, let's get this out. That's it for water. Wastewater.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Board, wastewater treated during the month of October, 4.1 million gallons. Gallons of sludge processed, 31,500, and the pounds of sludge processed, 4,377 pounds. He was on grand jury duty. Scott did a great job filling in. I think everybody knows that. And I also just want to let the board and the mayor know that the funds that were approved just, I guess, maybe the October meeting, September, for the roof repairs to the administration building are done. That's also where we do, I think, all the lab work. And the pavement, the apron is finally repaired as well. So those are two good projects, and thank the board for supporting those. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, committee reports, streetscape.
Okay. I have circulated to the board, I was looking to locate a chair for the Streetscape Committee, and had Catherine Morrison come forward and volunteer herself. Catherine, I think, is well-versed in management and communication, which is, I think, some of the things that this project is really going to need. Specifically, she did work for the City of New York Department of Parks and Recreation, and implemented a vision for reforesting the city through public-private partnerships and supporting street tree and park plantings. So she is familiar with the kind of work that we're looking to do. She's quite enthusiastic about the task at hand, and I would like the board to approve Catherine Morrison as the chair of the Streetscape Committee.
Second, any discussion?
There's no questions.
Pretty strong resume.
She's great.
Yeah.
She's really great.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Very good, please.
Can somebody send me her contact information, her address and everything?
Yes.
So you've got-
You got all that.
Here, well, do you have a resume, Pat?
It's not on there.
Just her email?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Got somebody on-
I do. I'll get it. Yeah. That's great.
Tree committee.
Okay. So the tree committee had a wonderful planting day on November 2nd, where we planted a dozen trees up on Chestnut, Lorraine, and Livingston Streets. It all went quite well. First of all, I'd like to thank the bagel shop, who once again has provided caffeine and sustenance in the form of bagels. So thank you to the bagel shop. I'd like to read the list of volunteers. and excuse me if I mess up your name. So working for the village actually was Carl Delfino. He was delivering mulch and taking care of things that needed a large truck. The mayor was there, Gary Bassett, Mary Burns, Natalka Chas, Dodd Crane, Dorothy Crane, Walter Cotter, Jamie Derbyshire, Meg Crawford, Miles Flanagan, Laura Fusar, myself, Connie Lone, Alexis Martinez, Joyce Messenger, Trent Messenger, who's 6 years old, Ryan Milne, David Oliver, Olivia Selby, and Christopher Tabner. And I should say that there were eight Rhinebeck students doing their community service included in this group. And it was really a beautiful day. We had a wonderful time. And we will be doing this again next Arbor Day in April. So first of all, if you have a request, if you'd like a tree in front of your house, I'd like you to contact the village clerk. And second of all, if you'd like to volunteer, come out and help us. It's really a wonderful morning's worth of work. This month we started at about 9. We were done by about 12:30. And it was a beautiful sunny day. So lots of fun was had by all. The board also, the commission also had, let's see, so it's, did the commission have anything to do? I hope we voted on the, no. Okay, there are no permits. I just want to give some update. The Frost Foundation has given the village a grant with which we are doing a tree inventory and management plan. That process has begun. So I don't know if you've seen, there have been folks out.
I saw them out there today.
Yeah, they're out there right now. And hopefully we'll have all the information within a week or so, or at least all the initial information, not the management plan yet. As part of the Frost Foundation's grant, they said, hey, any money that you have left over, you can use to plant larger trees that you would normally be unable to plant. So, so far, we've allocated $1,800 to plant additional pine trees in Legion Park. So that'll be the first set of trees, and we're looking for some other spots, potentially up by the library, for some other large trees that we just normally wouldn't be able to put in. The other nice thing about doing this, and the folks at Davie Tree Companies have really been cooperating with us, is that the state has funds available for tree management, and specifically along state highways, which would be Route 9 and Market Street. So we have a quick deadline to turn around to get an application in. The Davie folks have already sent us the map of all the trees on those routes, the proposed costs, what it would take to do the management. I think we're going to get some recommendations. We're going to incorporate that into a grant that's going to go out to the state in early December.
December 4th.
December 4th. So that is, that's the state of that project, and it seems to be going along very nicely. We do have 2 applications for removal. One at 25 Beach Street. There is a large maple that the Tree Commission recommends be taken down. Basically, unfortunately, it's a nice old maple, but it's split, and over time, the split widens, and it's threatening a house or the street. So I'd like a motion to approve the removal of the large maple at 25 Beach Street.
Second?
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Okay, and we have one more at 49 Lorraine Drive. There's a Norway maple tree, which also is split and has a hollow trunk, and a Norway maple that needs pruning. So the Tree Commission recommends the removal of the first tree and pruning of the second. So may I have a motion to do so for that?
Second. Motion. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Very good. Carried.
Great. Okay,
Very
that's
good.
it.
Just, Rick, Trustee Lewitt, have you seen any snippets of the inventory software yet?
I have, yes.
So, I mean, it's really,
It's nice.
it's really detailed.
One of the things that we were looking at when we made the selection was that this is a web-based interface that anybody could come into, and it was really a nice interface and very, very clean, nice to use. You can zoom in, see on a Google map where the trees are, where the sites are. Yeah, it's real nice.
And the folks that have been out doing the assessment, that's now loaded, spreadsheet, exploitable. Tremendous level of detail, guys. I mean, it's really, really.
Yeah, they're pretty crackerjack. I think they really know.
He's like carrying like an iPad around.
Yeah, no, basically, I think it's basically
Yeah.
they're standing there entering the information. I think it's fed up directly to their server, and it's in a spreadsheet and
Can
it's
we get
logged.
points on our climate task force for tree inventory?
All right.
Cool.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, Veterans Committee. Exciting month. First, I'd like to thank the Montgomery Unit 429 American Legion Auxiliary for our Veterans Day celebration on November 11th, yesterday, at 11 a.m. at the Rhinebeck Cemetery. Again, their participation in conducting these veteran ceremonies are so well worth it for all of our veterans. So thank you to everybody that was there and for the Legion for doing that for us. We've been having, along with that, we've been having discussions on the sculpture, which is the Doughboy, over in the municipal lot. I think I mentioned at the last meeting that it's been 5 years since it's been cleaned, and it's due to be cleaned on a regular 5-year basis. And that cleaning includes, if I remember, Pat, it cleans it and they wax it, correct? To protect the surface of it. So Pat was able to reach out to the people who did it last time, and very thankfully, they're still in business, right? And so we got a quote from them for $1,800 to basically preserve our Doughboy, which I think is important to do, $18. And we also, as part of the discussion, were able to get a donation of $250 from the Rhinebeck Garden Club for this. So that $1,800 now becomes $1,550 to clean and wax and preserve the Doughboy. So I'd like to make a motion that we take $1,550 out of our contingency fund to be able to do this preparation and cleaning and preservation of the Doughboy, which is so important for us to do.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? So carried. All right. So second piece of kind of important news is I've been working with Neil Larson of the Rhinebeck Historic Grant on our American Legion Park. And everybody knows, if you don't, we have a structure down there. And that structure was built in the 1930s. We anticipate, and it's in bad need of repair. It unfortunately has gone by neglect, and so the stones are dislodged, the wall is caving in, we have a flag post there, all that kind of stuff. And it needs to be basically what we think is restored to its natural condition, right? I mean, we had some people look at it and give us some ballpark figures of local contractors and everything that could do it, and the numbers come in like $80,000 to be able to repair this and bring it back up to where it is. So with that, I then took it to the next level and said, can we have the Legion Park and our memorial in the Legion Park as part of the historic preservation and listed on the registry? And Neil said, absolutely, right? So that was a positive feedback. Because it's in the expanded historic district, he will include it as part of his work that he's doing for historic preservation now as a registry. So we'll have the park and the memorial included on the National Registry when that work is done. Key. Because why that's key is now we can apply for historic preservation grants, right, to be able to do this. So we have a meeting set up, I think next week? I think it's the 18th, something like that, with I'll get to Dan McNenny, who was here that
Yeah,
night.
McNenny was here.
Yeah, I've been working with him on the community engagement. He's the coordinator. And the Division of Historic Preservation, Jennifer Betzworth,
Yeah.
of the Historic Preservation Specialist. And so we're going to meet with them to discuss how we can start now preparing for the grant. It's one thing if we have to wait till maybe next year to do the grant, but what we're trying to do is work in parallel to maybe get this grant in time when when the park and the memorial hit the historic register. So I think this is fantastic. This is on this entrance to our village. We're doing a lot of research right now. Brenda Klaproth has been doing a lot with the Historical Society. It turns out it's more than just the memorial that was there. And we may have to divide this up into phases and focus on doing the memorial first. But there once was a sculpture with a dog bowl, kind of a cement, very large cement structure that fed water and everything down there as well. We're trying to find and locate what that was, and maybe as a phase 2, consider that then as part of really restoring that park to what it really was back in when it was built into the 30s. So my thanks go to Pat, who's been working a lot on this with me to work with the Historic Preservation Society so that we can move this forward in a reasonable fashion. I'm looking forward to doing this through the national parks. And last, Pat and a group of local knitters sent out 24 hand-knit scarves, dainty bags, bandanas, and thank you notes, and stars for our troops to Operation Gratitude to our soldiers who are actively in service today, correct? They're active service members, so thank you, Pat, for doing that. Yeah. Next meeting is going to be December 2nd at 1 p.m. here at Village Hall. And so that concludes the Veterans report.
Mr. Mayor, I just have to tell you that when I was representing the village at the Rhinebeck at Home event, interesting woman came over, started chatting, and knew a lot about the monument. And the dog bowl was because this was originally funded by the Astor family, Pat's shaking her head, and she loved dogs.
Yeah. Hull, I think was her last name, and yeah, she's like, I can't remember her full name, Brenda just sent that out in an email.
Oh.
And she was a very strong dog enthusiast, and it had a fountain, and then at the bottom of the fountain was for the dogs.
Yeah.
And
great.
she said that that was there up until last year.
You're kidding.
No.
Oh, God.
But, we don't know where it's at. We'll find it, see what's going on, see if we can restore it. All right, so Grants Committee.
Well, like Trustee Lou just did a good job updating on the December 4th deadline for the tree inventory. That application is dependent on the inventory, and that's why the scope seems narrow, but that was the only thing, that was the only way to meet the deadline. So we're working away on that. I just want to share a little bit about some follow-up that I did with what was disappointing news. It's not the first time that we've been denied a grant. And when we're denied a grant, and specifically talking about the CFA REDC grant that we did for the feasibility study for sidewalks and bike path. $12,500. So, but in the past, if we get denied a grant, you know, we step back, we learn from it. If we can get a debriefing that's valuable to us. But this one was denied because of a technical reason, and I've uploaded all the information, and so I'm not going to go through it in detail, Mr. Mayor, because it's up in the cloud. I did decide to pull together the details, and essentially the reason that we were denied, and we received a letter from Assistant Director Lowry from the DEC, specifically CSC, was because of among other things, it's not among other things, it was for this reason that we had selected planning and infrastructure for biking, walking, sidewalk studies are not an eligible project type in 2019 under the certification category. I provided in this write-up an email that predated the submission of our grant back in early July, and I actually reached out about this very question, and because there was an option, is this implementation or is this certification, and The written documented feedback that we got was choose certification, and then answer yes for PE6. And Vanessa was talking about the planning elements there earlier this evening. And the other assertion from the DEC was that PE6 can only be used for master plans. But in fact, I provided the sections from the CSC's own documentation, at least the PE6s that are relevant, the PEs that are relevant to this assertion that it had to be a master plan. You don't find the word master plan in there at all. I decided to send this to Megan Taylor's office. Megan is the director for all of Hudson Valley, the REDC CFA applications. And I received a phone call from her office last week, and they indicated that they forwarded this package, which the board has in the cloud, to Assistant Lowry, and he is supposed to be giving me a call back or getting in touch with me. To be clear, the REDC regional office has no ability to represent either party in any of this, but did say to me, this is a strong argument that you've put together here. I don't know where this all goes, Mr. Mayor, Rick, Paul, but we at least have it in writing that we were following the best directions that we received at the time. And we'll see what the feedback is.
Yeah, but there was another comment that they made, which was perplexing to me.
Yeah.
It says the proposed project is a sidewalk study and not a bike pedestrian master plan covering the whole community, as described in CSC PE6,
Yeah.
which says a planning and infrastructure for bicycling and walking. I mean, we did submit for a sidewalk study, but we didn't really mention anything in our grant for biking.
Oh, we certainly did in the action plan. And, part of what I wrote back, in my response about this was, and I don't want to go through the whole thing, but we do say that the CSC application includes a section PE6, which, according to Mr. Lowry, is intended for bike pedestrian master plans covering the whole community. That's specifically what he asserts, Gary. I have included, please see pages 4 and 5 of the attached PDF, the agency's own reference material specific to PE6. There is no mention of a master plan requirement. PE6 does note the need for a comprehensive plan, and our response was to furnish, as part of our application, a robust work plan which included 5 pages of action items and detailed maps. Now, that 5-page work plan did incorporate bike paths as well.
Well, then I think there's a miscommunication here, because they said planning and infrastructure for bicycling and walking sidewalk studies are not an eligible project type under the certification category.
Right, he says it's intended for bike pedestrian master plans covering the whole community. But there is no language that says master plan in their own documentation.
But our grant was to update the sidewalk study.
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
It didn't,
And incorporated bike paths too. Yeah.
the sidewalk study doesn't have a bike path in it, really.
But our action plan did, that's what I'm telling you, is that the action plan did. We discussed that. Yes, and I think if you look at I'm not sure if you're looking at the 2011 sidewalk plan or the 2014 one that was done in concert with Poughkeepsie Department of Transportation, clearly bike paths are mentioned, I think in both, but certainly in one. And without question, we incorporated it into our submission. Our 5-page action plan definitely incorporated it.
So somehow there's a huge mismatch in what was submitted versus what they're reading.
I would say that the bigger issue is the fact that there's a suggestion that we should have submitted this as something other than certification. But we submitted it as certification. There's no denying that, because that was the counsel, that was the advice that we were given. And as I said, we have a written path, to prove that.
Yeah, I guess where I'm heading is, after spending a day with the multiple engineering and talking to them about grants, right, and how they approach grants in the process, I think we need to rethink our process, to be able to be more successful going forward in the future for how we want to obtain money. And maybe we need to professionalize this in a way, to get, not only have an advisory committee available, but have a professional organization, whether it be in engineering or somebody who's capable of speaking the language of what the grant committee really wants to hear. I don't know, what did the board think?
Honestly, I participated in these discussions and, quite frankly, was impressed with the fact that the engineering firms are looking, especially the one or two that we thought, were the most proficient, let's say, are incorporating it into a kind of strategy in the sense that they recognize that, well, quite frankly, from their perspective, if they want to get work, they need to actually get grants. And so they've, got some specialists on hand that, have MPA degrees, have marketing experience, and quite frankly have, and that was one of the questions actually that we asked, have said that they've had, considerable success because they have this specialty personnel. And I honestly agree with the mayor. I think that, despite our best efforts, we need to possibly look at it differently, engage some, professionals. And quite frankly, I think it's not just, let's say an outsider. I think we need to have folks here engaged and looking at things and basically getting feedback from, let's say, the professionals, but also possibly, because we have so many talented people here, looking at it as well. The more eyes, the better, quite frankly. So I agree with you.
There is a history of reaching out by the grant committee, by myself, to members of the board, yourself included, before you were even on the board.
Yeah.
You might recall when we did you did join me for the one meeting.
Yeah.
But I was using, it was a version of SharePoint, where I was reaching out, asking everyone to participate, give comments.
Yep.
That wasn't successful, and there's probably lots of reasons for that. But
yeah, it's not a question.
But
It's a
there's always
question.
been an effort to engage and embrace everybody as much as possible. I would say that I don't disagree with anything.
Yeah.
Look, we want to be successful, and if there's a path that is more successful than what we've exercised, why wouldn't we pursue that?
Yeah.
It's in the best interest of the village, of course.
Yeah.
For the record, by the way, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the CFA REDC window, which is this specific grant, opened right around Memorial Day. The record will show that I was discussing this throughout, from end of May until today, and they have workshops that are available. Don Warner and I went to the one at Marist. I went to the second one at Bard, and you're supposed to ask questions to the agencies when you have some uncertainty. And you might remember that we, and Gary, you actually had suggested this, which was a good suggestion, reach out to Kingston, let's see what they did. And the contact at Kingston could have been more helpful to us, Paul, and actually introduced us to the 5 engineers that gave them quotes, who we then in turn reached out to as well.
There's no question that everyone has done, certainly you have, certainly Donna and other folks that have participated, either to a greater or lesser degree, that you've done the best you can. There's no question about that. It's just that I think from what I saw.
Yeah, you don't have to sell me on it. I'm supportive
no,
of it.
but I just want to make it clear that what we saw in talking with the engineering firms is that from their perspective at least, it's become really something that you hand over to people who have dedicated 20 years to doing it. And I think we need to bring in that dimension. And I also think it's
point taken.
And I think it's it's very important in the selection process that we're going through that the engineering firms really contribute as well. So I support the notion of looking into the future, so to speak, a little bit, opening the door towards inviting a new process into this mix, but also keeping all of our experienced eyes, because one of the things that's very important is we all have our own perspectives. I mean, you've been doing this, and quite frankly, you have a lot of attention to detail. I have my own perspective on this. I think I asked some questions from Crawford, and I saw some responses, and I was it also indicated to me that choosing the right engineering firm to complement the grants is very important. So I'd like to see us move forward and explore how we can you know, enhance our
So I don't know if
capabilities.
it's the same engineering firm that we would select in the process here, though.
No.
Right, so I've been thinking a lot about this, and my thinking is that maybe we should go out with an RFP to ask for specific grant services, right, in some way, to professionalize this. And so, like, today, we have our attorney on retainer, right? We're looking to get an engineering firm on a retainer that we can go to. We're now really trying to say, we really need somebody that specializes in grants.
Yeah, I agree.
Whether it's an engineering firm or not, I'm not picking, but we should solicit input and maybe go through a selection process and see what we can come up with.
So you're suggesting somebody basically who would be on tap, who we would say, who would have some sort of retainer with, we say, we're working on a sidewalk
Guys, we can
grant.
start right now, right? You know,
Yeah, right.
We've got one in the hopper for December 4th.
Well,
By all means, yeah.
Yeah, well, no, I think we got to go through a process of finding somebody to work with is the issue. We don't have, to do that.
I got the impression that you had a feel for some people as early as today.
No.
It was informative to see their perspective and how they're approaching it as an
What is
integrated
it, what
process.
is ever in the best interest of the village, we want to pursue, so
So I'd like to pursue, I think, and tell me what you think. I would like to pursue doing another RFP for professional grant writing services.
Personally, I agree. I think it's a good idea. I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, I think over time, certainly, I feel like over time, we've bumped into people who would seem to have the qualifications or are in the area. So it might be nice to say, formalize one of these relationships and really say, because this stuff is hard. It's really hard. And, you know.
anyone who's actually done a grant, particularly any of the CFA or like the NYSERDA ones or the DEC, the IntelliGrants with New York State that we're doing right now, you got to be prepared to invest about 45, 55 hours of your time per grant.
Yeah.
Well, what they're telling
Guys,
us, they're telling us today 6 months. They're telling us it's a 6-month effort.
Yeah, that's probably true.
To be able to get it, and we need somebody that can dedicate that time to do it. All right,
Just to be
so,
clear, sorry, what we heard today too, it's a 6-month process and it has several dimensions in the sense that there's the professional, let's say, preparation, and the preparation includes, just finding out what grants are available, but also taking a look at the village.
I'm pretty familiar.
But it's really, it was an education for me.
Good.
Okay, and I think, we should move ahead with it as quickly as
all right,
possible.
so I
I
don't
agree.
know. I need help doing this.
Okay.
The RFP, if we're gonna go on an RFP, somebody's gotta take on the task.
I'll try drafting it, I'll give it a shot
All right, can you have something available for us for the next meeting?
for the next month, yeah.
Next monthly
Yeah,
meeting?
I think
That
I
we can move, because that grant cycle is gonna start, and if you think about how grants start lining up, the May, June, July,
There's always a grant cycle, it's not that we're waiting for it
yeah, I
to
know,
start.
but
It's always,
we gotta get going on it. Okay, so all right, so you'll come forward with
Yeah.
a proposal, and please.
I'll reach out to you and see if we can get.
now let's have an
something up.
equally spirited discussion about a grant that we actually won.
Let's try to get it. Okay, we also had the electric vehicle station
Yeah,
grant,
that-
which is,
That's what I was segueing to, yeah.
do you want, that,
No, go ahead.
well, I think it expires in February, is when it expires, so to be done.
Well, I
So-
don't have that confirmed from, I forgot her name, who reached out to me. I don't have a date, but.
All right,
You may well be right.
I went back through the records,
That would be
and
about 2 years.
I went back through the records, and it's like some date in February, it's like February something, that it times out completely. So we have to make a decision. We can say, we're not going to accept this money, and we're not going to use it, right? We've had the discussion on using the grant for multiple places, or we can try to resurrect it and put it in motion.
Yeah, well, I think
All right.
we should resurrect it, put it in motion and use it for electric vehicle charging.
So if we do that, well, let's break it up into components. The first thing is we're going to require location change to be able to do it, wherever we try to do it, because we had it proposed for up by the library.
Correct.
And
Right.
that is no longer a valid place, okay? So we need to discuss the alternatives to do this. So the first place would be, I'd like to make a motion that we resurrect this electric vehicle station grant to move it forward.
Seconded.
Yeah. I
And it-
disagree. Let's
Move on.
discuss.
So, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay. Second thing is, we need to dis,
Yes, I'm opposed to the mayor's motion, because.
oh, okay, you don't want to resurrect it. First one
Let's
is,
have a discussion before we make a decision to resurrect it.
well, I was first, second, and then I was going to call for discussion. So is there any other discussion? We seconded it.
Okay.
But there's really nothing to be resurrected. It's actually an active grant.
Well,
What we have to discuss is, do we want to return the funds to the state, or do we want to use the funds? There's nothing to resurrect.
All right, well, we have to decide as a board if we want to use the grant.
Yes,
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I asked the board for approval. Do we want to use the grant? Okay, we got a motion to first, we got a second. Is there any discussion on using the grant?
I want to discuss where it's going to be.
Yeah, that's part two. That's why I want to break it up into two. I broke it up into two parts in my mind.
Okay.
One, we want to use the grant. Second part of that is, so I'd like to make a motion. I made a motion that we use the grant. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained?
Opposed.
All right, fine. Second part of grant is now, we agreed to want to use it, so now where do we use it? We currently have EV stations here behind the municipal hall, right? And we brought forward a proposal to put them over in the municipal parking lot, right, as well, right?
Well, it wasn't proposed, it was discussed at our January meeting.
Well, all right, I think it was a proposal we brought forward, a position to change it. I'm resurrecting that. We're having that discussion of where do we want to have it, right? So,
You like the word resurrect.
fine. Is there any other alternatives besides those places?
So either back here or in the municipal lot?
Or an alternative?
I don't know of any other.
Well, from my perspective, I think that those are two of the logical choices. And since the library is basically a closed book.
That's closed.
Well, they have charging stations there. The library has charging.
Well, that's in the town, and they have one charging, one dual port.
Right.
Yeah.
This was in the field across from it
Yeah,
to create a
field
parking lot.
across is where I guess we're talking.
Oh, yeah, that's not going to work.
So, in my view, my personal preference is for municipal lot, primarily because I think it, well, a couple of reasons. One is I think it basically makes a strong statement that in the village we're actually encouraging behaviors that are environmentally sound and sustainable. And in essence, placing those charging stations there will make them more visible, make them more accessible, quite frankly. I don't know what the position here is, but I understand that there's some discussion that maybe there's a safety issue, maybe the police have some concerns about that. I don't discount that. I just think that, creating a situation where it's highly visible, where we're basically taking a stand and asserting that we're moving in that direction is very important. And so my preference would be for the municipal lot.
Yeah, the PD does have a concern about putting more traffic
Yeah.
into the parking lot. We've had a significant increase in the traffic back here because of it. It's not saying we can't, but they have a concern about putting them over there.
Okay.
Yeah, with traffic.
Why do we think that we need more charging stations? And I'm sorry, I'm asking a question that's.
No, that's fair, no, that's a fair question.
Well, Gary, back in December 2018, you provided to all the trustees and to Pat the login for the dashboard of the charging stations. And I looked at it today, and there's three categories. I don't know if anyone else has looked at it, have you?
I look at it often, yes.
So then you know that it's moderate. We're not low, which is, thank goodness, right? We're not high, we're moderate. Why don't we get to high and then we consider installing more charging stations? Our own traffic doesn't justify. We're a moderate user. The village is moderately uses the four stations that we have.
And in response, I'm going to tee off a Paul from that, is that number one is sending a statement, right? That the village of Rhinebeck is really promoting the use of reducing our carbon footprint and installing more EV car chargers to be able to do that. It's one of the most significant things you can do to encourage that kind of behavior, right, to be able to make it available for people to use. It is available back here. It's not as visible as it would be to send a message as it would be in the municipal parking lot. And if you talk to people who want to, about this, they would encourage us to put them in a more visible spot.
For sure.
That is more receptive and people can see them, that will drive that, that will help drive that demand, right? So that's my rationale, because I want, as a village, I want to send a statement that we are concerned about the environment, we care, that we want to be able to encourage people, as many do, to use electric vehicles here who come to visit, who are living here or whatever, to be able to have that availability.
I have a simple philosophy about that, which is you build it and they will come.
But that's not true, Paul, because our usage is, 18 months into this, moderate.
So why are you against it?
Because it's not, we don't have enough traffic to demonstrate.
So you oppose the notion of a walkable, bikeable, sustainable.
Paul, please, you're making rather
Well, see, it's not,
ridiculous leap here.
okay, no, it's not ridiculous. It's not,
I'm providing analytics that are available to all of us, and the analytics
I think you
say-
just don't like the idea.
Well,
Can I make a comment? If you remember correctly, Kira Bonanza gave you all kinds of statistics about EV chargers, and John, you didn't want to hear any of her numbers, but she had numbers that showed you how there was going to be an increase in people driving electric vehicles. It might have not been this year, but it's going to happen.
with all due respect, I mean, the conversation as recorded in the minutes from January 2018 talked to my desire that we be provided with input from our merchants. We're taking spaces away that can't.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the statistics that she was giving, how it will be more of a demand for EV chargers. And you were quite rude to her, if I remember correctly.
Well,
you really shut her down.
So,
I'm sorry, I don't recall it that way, and the minutes don't record it that way. And
so your concern is taking away a gas parking spot? That's your concern?
taking away parking spots. that
For
are
gas-
used
for gas vehicles.
That are used but for the benefit of our businesses. Look, this is becoming a little bit.
No, well, you wanted to have the discussion, we're going to have the discussion.
And I'm providing analytics, I'm providing the documentation that was discussed at the January meeting.
Okay, so the analytics.
And the suggestion is that I'm somehow not interested in this.
No, the analytics that you're ignoring is the recent analytics that basically say that for decades now, laws have been favoring vehicle use, requiring, in essence, vehicle use, favoring gasoline engine use. Okay, so we're just basically taking the stand that basically says, look, we can also favor electric vehicle use. So there are many instances,
Well, I
even in our own
understand,
code.
I really do.
Well, but basically.
We have 3
you
adult
have to-
drivers in my house, we have 1 4-cylinder car.
Yeah,
No
okay.
one, I don't know anyone that walks and
We
bikes.
don't need to be protective of gasoline vehicle use. There's plenty of protection, legal, even in our own zoning code, that favors vehicle use, okay? Gasoline vehicle use. All I'm saying is that I think it's worthwhile for us to make a statement, to put it out there, to make it more visible. I think it's wonderful we have
We're going to
something.
disagree, we're going to disagree.
Fine.
So, I mean, gentlemen, that's why you put it to a vote, and I think.
So,
that-
so the second issue would be, we're throwing away the already approved grant that they've already said we can change the location at. We have an approved grant. It's there.
Right, but-
It's
but
money and
Karen,
it's approved.
It still costs us money, yeah, I mean.
I wish Karen was here, because I don't think it costs us anything, because, in terms of implementation, because a grant would cover it, because we
Well,
put in kind.
It's, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And the in-kind includes we own the property, right, to be able to do that.
Yes,
So I think it's free,
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
I'd just like to weigh in here, John. When we had this initial discussion, I was concerned, as you were, about the parking situation. As I got deeper into the streetscape literature and the streetscape stuff, basically what I came to realize is that for a long time, we designed for the automobile. And the more we design for the automobile, the less we design for pedestrians. And basically, that's sometimes why you wind up with roads that are too wide or side, just all those issues. And I feel like we are, well, so one, if you're going to create new things or build things, you're going to have to disturb the status quo. And I think the other thing that's come to me, at least in the last months, is that I feel like if we are really going to make a movement on climate change, if we're really going to make a statement, and I do believe we are making a statement, then we have to take some visible, positive action. Because I think as we've seen, what's going on is that we are going to have to move to a much less carbon-based economy. And I think by putting chargers in a visible place, that, at least for somebody like me, I'd be like, wow, I can drive. I would now much more consider buying an electric vehicle. And I think that this would be something that I do think that there is sort of almost a moral and a proactive component to this. That it's a leadership position, and it is inconveniencing. But I think in this case, taking a leadership point of view, a leadership stance on this important issue, I think is really worth it. And that's I changed my thinking from the vote that we had
respect that.
6 months ago. Yeah, so I just wanted to know.
I wish that you gentlemen would respect the fact that I just don't agree.
No, I do, but I'm just want to explain, why I'm thinking like I'm thinking now, and it's a change, seeing the events of the last 9 months, and seeing how climate policy is being changed. I feel like we have to do something right here on the ground.
When Gary and I first were working on the EV charging stations, we went to the planning board. I joined you, and you wanted to engage them and embrace them in this decision that we were going to move forward with the application, and gain their thoughts on where it should go as well. Are we having any outreach to the planning board this time?
You can do it again, that's fine, but I think we as a board have to decide, and then we can go to the planning board and seek their input, but it's not a final to say. Because as Rick said, and as I've said, we're trying to make a statement to make it visible, and we're trying to make a statement about climate, right, and reducing our carbon footprint. Not just for us, but for everybody, all right? And that's the
Honestly, I
statement
think
we
it's
make.
fine to have lots of opinions, but quite frankly, I don't see how, I don't really want to delay the process here. The verdict is in about climate change, it's happening. There are certain key contributors. One of them is gasoline engines, and it's not just gasoline engines, it's also other aspects of cars. I mean, the tires and everything else having to do with the car also has its contribution in a different way to climate change and to polluting the environment. And with all due respect to the planning board, they're not experts. There's no one there who's an expert on climate change.
Well, I think we appreciated their opinion. You would agree with that when we sat with them 2 years ago.
And I said, I don't mind reaching out to them, but it's not a final say of yes or no, right?
And honestly, I really don't think we need to do that. As I said, if we had an expert, either a consultant or something like that, it's not necessary. This is about adding something that we already decided on. There's grant money available, and quite frankly, I'm sure there'll be some concern about losing a space or two. At the same time,
And it seems the chamber should be invited into that discussion as well. And by the way, that's where the meeting, that's where the discussion took place with Kyra, Ms. Bonanza, was that she was going to go back, solicit input from the chamber, and come back to the board and say, hey, here's how the business is here. We never got that.
Yeah, you're right, because she was basically turned off from getting that, right? And she was turned off by your actions in terms of that meeting. So she asked very plainly, what do you need in analytical, and you didn't answer her at that meeting. So that's history. We're now here. The grant's going to expire. We agree that we want to move forward with the grant. The second is we need to either agree or disagree or move forward on the location of where we're going to install it if we want to do it. So I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with changing the grant to install the 2 dual-port EV charging stations that are approved with the NYSERDA grant in the area over in the corner of the northeast, in the municipal parking lot.
Second.
And this was, we'd seen some drawings that basically already sketched
can-
out, there was a
yes.
reconfiguration of the
I sketched out all those
handicap,
drawings. I
right.
didn't bring them with me.
Okay, but based on,
It's same thing.
based upon that drawing?
Right.
Okay, yeah,
Approved by John Fenton, approved by PD, you know,
right.
as valuable
As
spots.
approved by those, yes.
Yeah.
I do want to just correct the record, Mr. Mayor, because Trustee Rossi asked Ms. Bonanza to ask the business their opinion, the businesses their opinion regarding taking 4 existing parking spots and making them EV charging station. Ms. Bonanza stated she would ask the merchants. If you want to color that as what did not take place and that somehow I was rude to her, I think that's a misrepresentation, and that certainly isn't what's stated in the minutes.
Fine. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
Abstain? All right, so carried. So we're going to move forward. Okay, we're not done yet.
But wait, there's more.
Special requests. Santa Claus. Pat, do you have these?
Santa Claus for the building used for crown and branches. Been approved by the fire department to use the tables, I've been approved by Pete, he doesn't have any problem. Do you want to do them one at a time or all together?
Let's do them all together.
The second one is Foster's Coach House for their annual tree lighting to be held on November 27th at, this event start time is at 6 o'clock. And again, Pete has no issues with that.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to accept the special requests for the Santa Claus Crown and Branches and Foster's Tree Lighting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? So carried.
What about the Christmas tree lighting?
The
The what?
rotary tree lighting, she was confused with the pedaling permit.
Oh,
Already approved the rotary tree lighting.
okay, so that's not necessary, okay.
So the next thing, which I sent out an email on over the weekend because I got this Friday afternoon, was the subject regarding Wells Manor, right? And this is from the town, the law offices of Warren Raplansky. It's a very long, lengthy article, but essentially, it's a request for Article 11 for private housing finance law exemption for Wells Manor, right? I can summarize this. Basically, what the town is asking us to do is the town assessor advises that the property has for many years benefited from 100% exemption from county, town, school, and village taxes. The prospective purchaser requested that the town renew the 100% exemption pursuant to Article 577 of the Public Housing Finance Law for a period of 40 years effective from the date of the tax exemption. They're closing their review, and although the Village of Rhinebeck does not have a statutory authority to approve or deny the exception request, a resolution has been submitted for the village to pass endorsing the grant for this exemption. Any other discussion needed? So I'd like to make a motion to accept the request from the town of Rhinebeck for Article 7 private housing finance law to exempt Wells Manor for the 100% exemption from county, town, school, and village taxes.
Second.
Any discussion?
So this is not a change in status, although Northern Duchess it's changing hands. The Wells Manor
Wells Manor is changing hands.
Wells Manor is changing hands. And that will be run by the National Foundation for Affordable Housing. And I think, given what they're doing, continuing to provide this tax relief is necessary. It's good.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Carried. Thank you. Pat, will you follow up with this with the town, please? All right, next, minutes approval for October 8th, 2019, and October 15th, 2019. Do I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
All right, so any discussion?
You have a couple of items, Gary.
Who seconded it?
Paul?
Who made the
I made the motion.
So seconded, I should say. Sorry.
I should have said I made the motion.
Oh, yes. Two minor typos, that's all. One in each of the minutes. But I can go through them with Pat. Really minor stuff. I think the word equipment was spelled wrong. Pat, on page 10, the word community is spelled wrong. Just a typo. And that's for the October 8th minutes.
Spell check can't get it right all the time.
You're right.
Squiggly line is your friend.
You'll see it at the bottom of page 10.
Okay.
And the special meeting minutes of October 5th,
15.
this one spell checking didn't get it wrong. Unfortunately, the page isn't numbered, but it's at page 7 in the October 15th special meeting.
Okay.
The word equipment, towards the bottom,
Okay.
spelled it wrong. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'd like to amend the motion to say to accept the October 8th, 2019 and October 15th, 2019 with the recommended changes be approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? So carried. Thank you. We have correspondence on file at the clerk's office and on our website, and that's a letter from Schulte from Central Hudson on the trees that she currently possesses. And we've discussed through the resolution, the Dutchess County Airbnb response to it. So they're all on file. And lastly, what I'd like to do is always recognize those people who have been working for the village. And first, I'd like to recognize our building maintenance, John Ramondo, for 19 years of service, effective, I think this should have said November 8th and 19th. And wastewater treatment plant operator, David Secor, who now is 1 year of service. Yes, works for wastewater on, actually today, November 12th. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the November 12th meeting.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? So carried. Thank you all.
Thank you.
That's a wrap.
Everyone.